Welcome to this final closing event of TSO 2020, the largest project funded by the first Synergy call under the Connecting Europe facility, which is a big EU fund for projects of European infrastructure that are considered priorities for Europe. Synergy, in this case, means a synergy between transport and energy, and TSO 2020 specifically had as a goal to demonstrate the technical and commercial viability of power to hydrogen and the subsequent use of that hydrogen in transport. So, who am I? My name is Mariette Van Empel. I'm the managing editor of Energy Monitor, a new website launched last September by the New Statesman Group in the UK. And our goal is to lead data-driven stories about the energy transition. A few housekeeping points before we properly kick off. Today's event will be recorded, so you're lucky to have a chance to watch it a second time. And the slides will be made available to you afterwards. The only other point is questions. So we have a lot of interesting speakers with us today, but we're hoping we're not going to be the only ones to be discussing amongst ourselves. So if you have questions, please do send them in via the chat, and we'll try to take as many of those as we can as we get through the program. With that, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, TSO's 2020's coordinator, of course, Remco Wassink. His day job is working for GasUnie, where he's fully focused on hydrogen these days. Over to you to introduce the project.
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, welcome everybody, and welcome here in the Hydrogen Valley in Groningen. I would like to show you the first slide, if the system is working.
It is.
Oh, it's too far. I think we're missing the slides. Well.
Okay, we'll try and get those for you.
Let me stop clicking before the whole system goes
Or
blank.
maybe start leading us into the project. Get us warmed up.
Yes. I think it's good to take you on a small journey already before I show the slides. We started out with the idea in 2016, where a group of people were...
Yeah, I think we've got the slides.
Yeah?
I see them there.
Perfect. Only I don't see them, but that's no problem. Yes, there it is.
There they are.
Okay. Perfect.
So, carry on.
Let's start with what was TSO and what is TSO. TSO started out with a group of 7 partners. You see them in the right. It's the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. We have TenneT, we have TU Delft, we have Green Planet, New Energy, EASE, and finally also GasUnie. And the project was all about doing research and also doing pilots. And you see on the left side the studies we performed during TSO, which is grid stability studies, cost-benefit analysis, and also the market studies. But I think the main focus was here to do also physical projects. So you see on the right side we have the 1 megawatt electrolyzer in Zuidwending in Groningen here in the province. And we also have the hydrogen hub in Delfzijl, where trailers can be filled with hydrogen. And these trailers can go through the north and the rest of the Netherlands to transport all the produced hydrogen. And another important thing is the hydrogen refueling station in Pesse at Green Planet. And this was, in a nutshell, what we have been working on the last 5 years. Because as I already told, we started out in 2016, and the kickoff was in February 2017. That's where the whole idea was generated, and also the process was started for the grant agreement to get finance from the European Union and also from the Netherlands, from the government. And finally, in September that year, in 2017, the contracts were signed and we started working. So And working was first of all on the 1 megawatt electrolyzer, which was physically finished in 2018 and was fully operational in February 2018. We also had to install some solar panels to produce green electricity for the electrolyzer. Unfortunately, they were blown away during a storm, but finally in 2019, in April, they were also fitted and installed, and we had our whole system running. Another important milestone, I think, was in 2019 was the cost-benefit analysis, which we performed to show the business case for green hydrogen. And yeah, for us, a very important milestone was the opening of the electrolyzer in June 2019 by His Majesty the King, of which you will see some pictures somewhere during these presentations. And then in September 2019, we had the first official delivery with green hydrogen from Zuidwending. And I think yeah, these were all very important milestones for the project as a whole and for hydrogen in special. I mean, this showed that it's all possible, and I think that's really important to yeah, to emphasize on. In December 2019, TU Delft presented the studies and research on the stability of the electricity grid, which is also really important. It's an important function which electrolyzers can perform. They can balance the electricity grid, and this was one of the main topics TU Delft focused on. So then we ran into some delays because we had to deliver the hydrogen refueling station. But in the Netherlands we had the nitrogen crisis, and this was yeah, a large problem for us because due to this crisis we could not get permits. So building had to stop, and yeah, this gave us some delay. And when we were finally running again, we ran into COVID-19, which was another problem. So I must say the last two milestones were really hard to bring to the end. But I can say we did it, and we have now yeah, finished all the physical projects and pilots, and they're all running. And of course, some growing pains here and there, but that's yeah, that's common with pilot projects. So, and I think all the speakers next to me will yeah, show you what we have done. First of all, now we will take a look into the future of hydrogen, and I think Mr. Renee Schritz will inform you later on that. But before I do that, I want to show you a short movie about what Hystock and the hydrogen filling station is all about. So if we can start the movie.
Gasunie and its subsidiary Energy Stock have built the first 1 megawatt green hydrogen installation in the Netherlands near its underground gas storage in the province of Groningen. The unit uses green power to separate water into green hydrogen and oxygen in a process called electrolysis. 1 megawatt hour of green power is converted into 17 kilograms of green hydrogen per hour. To achieve this, around 3,600 solar panels are being installed on the storage site. In addition, the green hydrogen installation is also connected to TenneT's high-voltage electricity grid, through which green power is delivered. 3 containers are installed on site. The first contains equipment to convert the green power to the required voltage for the electrolyzer. The second contains the electrolyzer in which water is separated into hydrogen and oxygen. The third contains the compressor, which brings the hydrogen to the correct pressure, varying from 200 to 300 bar. The hydrogen is stored in a trailer capable of transporting 800 kilograms of hydrogen to customers in the mobility sector or industry. In the Netherlands and other countries, filling stations are being developed where cars, buses, and other heavy-duty vehicles can fill up with hydrogen, for example at Green Planet's filling station in Pesse. Filling up takes around 3 minutes, the same as for petrol and diesel cars. A hydrogen car can run for approximately 500 kilometers on a 5-kilogram tank of hydrogen. Green hydrogen can be used as a renewable resource or fuel by the industry. Currently, the industry already uses large quantities of hydrogen as a resource. Hydrogen is a sustainable energy carrier that is desperately needed to realize the targets set out by the draft of the climate agreement. It is CO2-free energy that can bring a balance to our future energy management. The aim of the HyStock project is to boost the green hydrogen market and provide the Netherlands with proof that green hydrogen works. It is an important step towards the large-scale use of green hydrogen in the Dutch energy supply.
Well, I think this gives you an overview of what we have done so far. And now to start up with our webinar, you can now see a small sneak peek of all the initiatives that TSO 2020 has led to. I will not go into them because I think the speakers after me will show you and tell you what's all coming in the coming years. And yeah, to do that without any further ado, I would like to give word to Mr. Renee Schritz, Managing Director of High North. And maybe you can start off with telling what High North is.
Yes, thank you very much, Remco, for the introduction. I will for sure tell what High North is, but not at this moment in time because it's somewhere later in the presentation. And I think all pieces will come together at that time. I've been asked to take you in setting the scene. So it's with pleasure that I'm going to do that. And to start off actually with the first timeline, which represents the hot strategic summer in 2020, where all, at least large countries in Europe have launched their hydrogen strategy. And together with launching the hydrogen strategy, also lots of money were put to the strategies to help building up the hydrogen economy. At the start of the project, what Remco already mentioned in 2016, you see a kind of empty timeline at that moment in time. So really at the start of the project TSO 2020, there was not so much discussion about hydrogen. It was not seen as the key element. I think at that time still electricity was seen as, well, if we electrify everything, we're done, basically. But that has changed, and that has changed in a couple of years' time. And I think that is also due to the importance of the projects like 2020, TSO 2020, and what it has delivered. If you look at the globe, things will change in future with the energy transition. We're now basically at the start of the energy transition, and if you really are fair, we're going some decades back where the actual start was, and politicians and companies already to start to talk about becoming sustainable for the future. But what you see in this map is that we will get a different global balance in the renewable electricity or renewable energy supply, but also in the use of renewable energy. That means that we will have a new balance in import and export, a new balance in production, and also impact on the geopolitical scale. The Hydrogen Council in 2020 has looked at the supply chain for hydrogen. I think from the renewable energy, it's quite clear it's wind or solar which can do the job. Then you come to electrolysis. You need to store it and transport it to the end users. But the end users will not start all at the same time. Like in TSO 2020, the start is often with mobility, and it is actually where mobility has the first opportunity to get at the right price levels to trigger companies and people to make the jump next to the next phase. If you look at the right side of the picture, what the council there basically showed is the different end users, which can be in industry, it can be for heating processes. Obviously, it will be for feedstock, which is now also the common use of hydrogen, but also in mobility, in built environment, and also in electricity production. Because in the future, when we have a lot of renewable energy sources, we need to make sure that we can deal with the intermittent character of that. So we also need power plants in one way or the other that can help providing dispatchable power at the time that the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. This picture that has been made by the Hydrogen Council shows that by 2050, all can be competitive. And that's, I think, a key driver in many developments at this moment in time. Develop it till the level where the commodities in the end become cost competitive, and where you actually can make the appropriate choice of energy carrier in the process that you have. And then it's all about connection. If you have your projects, and I think that was already shown by the movie that you all have just seen, you have a location where production takes place. You have a location where end use is located. In this case, by a refueling station, so the actual end use is by the cars, of course, driving by. But nevertheless, transport needs to be done in between. If you don't have transport and storage, in this case in tube trailers, you cannot make the value chain work. And if you have transport, if transport means and storage means are available, that gives opportunities either to production sites, but also to user sites to further develop. So how to get this whole chain off the ground, because it's not just a part of the value chain that we need to build up, but it's the full value chain that we need to build up. We need to make sure that we build on infrastructure in between, and it can of course be in pipelines and underground storages, but it can also be in surface transport and storage, like for instance in tube trailers. I always call the issue of the energy transition an ostrich and egg story, because I believe it's larger than the chicken and egg story. Because it's very complex. It's complex not only because of the value chain that needs to be built up, but also in a complex situation of the energy transition, where we need to go from use of fossil fuels to use of renewable energy carriers. What you need for that, to accomplish that, the energy transition, is first of all scaling up. All technologies that we need are basically already existing, only not at the proper scale where we need to use them. So we need pilots, like TSO2020 has showed, demonstration plans and smaller projects that will grow to larger projects to, in the end, not only demonstrate that it can work, build up the market and volumes, but also give opportunity to learn from the experiences. We also need a lot of renewable energy sources. Discussion on hydrogen for a long time has been about electrolysis predominantly and on end use. But we need not to forget that a lot of renewable energy sources are needed. So plans for that need to be made as well. Like for instance in the Netherlands at this moment in time, 11.5 gigawatts of wind at sea power is being planned by 2030. But if you want to also have the 3 to 4 gigawatts electrolysis by 2030, that is the ambition of the Dutch government, that it also means that you need 3 to 4 gigawatt additional wind at sea to provide the electrons to convert into the hydrogen. So plans need to be on the whole value chain and not just on parts of the value chain. Then you need the first rolled out, and I think that's also a great example of TSO2020. You start small in a regional area where you build up the connection, and that you need to copy in other regions and then to expand and connect in between. And for that you need a lot of things, and you of course need the assets, but you also need the policies to make sure that everybody's going the right way and the same way. predominantly, not to work against each other, but to cooperate with each other. You need norms and standards. We don't live alone in the Netherlands or in Europe, but it will be a global market, so it needs to be clear that we need to discuss and agree upon global standards in the end. And we need law and regulation. A lot of law and regulation at this moment in time is not already built on the sustainable future. So we need to remove blockers from that law and regulation. But also we need to use the opportunities that we have, like for instance the example of the RED II implementation, Renewable Energy Directive, which will be implemented very soon. You have opportunities to basically support and accelerate the development of hydrogen by, for instance, using refineries and production of green hydrogen in refineries to already green the petrol and diesel fuels that are produced over there, and with that make a step in total greening the society, and in total reducing the CO2 emission, because that's of course the end goal. And then you need the funding and risk balance. The funding is, a lot of money is needed. We need to go through the value of test, as it's called. But we also need to look at risk balance. New risks will arise. Risks that industries cannot take, that governments cannot take, that individuals cannot take. So we need to find the right balance and help each other to build that new society. And then what we have done. This is a study, Highway 27, which was announced from the Dutch hydrogen vision that on 30th of March last year was presented by the Dutch government. And where they basically said, well, we want to investigate if and under what conditions the Dutch gas grid can be repurposed for transport of hydrogen. That study has been done. The results are almost done, and I expect that in the coming weeks, maybe already next week, the results will be published and will be sent to Parliament, because it's a study of Ministry of Economic Affairs, and they will offer it to Parliament to then discuss the next steps. And it of course is key that if you're going into a transition, you need to use what you already have and repurpose as much as possible. That's not only for gas grid, but it's for any option in the current assets that you already have. And then how to build it up. In Gasunie we defined the hop, step, jump model, which basically gives in the current decade the different steps to take, where you start in regions, you let the regions grow, you interconnect the regions, and you're going to expand to international connections, because nobody can be self-sufficient. You may be able to be self-sufficient, but probably it's not very smart if you want to have an open market, and an open market that is liquid, where you can build your trust on the fact that it will always be available hydrogen when you need it. Then we need good interconnections for that. You can't do it all at once, so you can't take the jump at once, but you need to take the step to build it up by the regions. And then I come to High North. In the northern part of the Netherlands, 3 provinces, Groningen, Drenthe and Friesland, more than 50 companies have, together with the government and knowledge institutions, put the plans together in the Northern Netherlands investment agenda for hydrogen. It's a 9 billion plan, which includes also a large project like North H2, which aims at 10 plus gigawatts in 2040, meaning 4 gigawatts by 2030 and 500 megawatts by 2025. But it's also about building up the value chain in region, combination of the projects in mobility and industry, heating, feedstock, together with building up the knowledge that we have already here. It's the triple helix, government, local government, together with industry, together with knowledge institutions, to build up a larger hydrogen valley, a larger ecosystem, which can be copied in different parts in Europe, and then interconnected to build up the hydrogen economy. We have a very good location for it due to the seaside, wind power, projects, industries, And that's what we can do in a systematic approach. And then I will close with the last picture that you already have seen shortly with the introduction of Remco. This is the project plan that has evolved in the past years for Gasunie, where starting with the TSO2020 in the northern part of the Netherlands, lots of projects have been started and initiated in different parts of the Netherlands, including, of course, the proposal of the backbone for hydrogen, connecting the 5 industrial clusters in the Netherlands with each other and also with international connections. It's a lot of electrolysis. It's still the bridge with blue hydrogen because we need volumes. We need to start off, but in the end, all with the aim to reduce the CO2 emission and to become net zero by 2050. And that's why I would like to leave my introduction.
Thank you very much, Renee. Very, very interesting. Just to clarify then, so High North is an overarching, I guess, implementation of all of these individual hydrogen-related projects in the 3 northern provinces. Yeah. So including North H2 and all of them.
High North is the Transformation Coordination Office, which is in development and will be launched shortly in September is the plan, to basically help bridging the gap, connecting the different projects, connecting different parties, set a roadmap, also make sure that we understand where the dependencies are between the different projects, what projects may be missing to actually design and build up the hydrogen economy in the region of the Northern Netherlands.
Okay, thank you. Please do send in your questions. It doesn't just have to be me asking them. I had 2 other quick follow-ups. One was the study on repurposing natural gas grids, which you say we can expect soon. I guess how, well, if you can give us a flavor of what's likely to be in that but more generally, how important is that, the ability to repurpose the national gas grids as part of the overall rollout of hydrogen? Yeah.
I think it's very key because it's an easy way to get a fast connection if assets are already there. You don't need to pull open the ground again, the underground, but you can repurpose what's already there. We have the opportunity because of the reducing transport of natural gas to carve out part of the system in Netherlands and accomplish with that a backbone by 27 that connects all the 5 different areas. So it's in terms of speed. It's also in terms of sustainability, because if you don't repurpose it, but for instance have new infrastructure, you still need to then remove the old infrastructure. So that does make sense. It can be done in a safe way. That's of course important, but also at much lower cost than rebuilding a new infrastructure. So
lower cost means, do you have any idea?
Factor 4.
Okay. 4 times cheaper.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And that's a mix of existing infrastructure, and parts of it will be new infrastructure, because obviously the larger part of the grid will still be used for transport of natural gas. And it means that some interconnections need to be made that are not available at that moment in time to use for hydrogen. It's about 1,000 kilometers of existing infrastructure and 200 kilometers of new pipeline. So on average, it's much lower cost.
And what will this study do exactly? That's setting out which parts of the natural gas grid could be repurposed, at what kind of cost, or what's the...
The study will answer the question if it can be done in a safe way, if it's technically possible, and what the cost of it will be.
Okay.
And based on that, there are some decisions to be made by the government, what then to do with that information. Yeah. But the answer will be it can be done.
Okay.
And what we've done previously, it is also on the project map, is already repurpose part of the grid in Zealand, where we have a pipeline between Douw and Yara that is already repurposed about 3 years ago, now transporting hydrogen, where we also can show it can be done.
Okay. And the final question I want to pick up on you, as you said, RED II, the Renewable Energy Directive, is supposed to be implemented this month, if I'm not mistaken. But we're also expecting the Fit for 55 package and a new proposal for RED III on the 14th of July. It sounds from what you said, RED II can already do a lot. Yeah. are you looking for more in RED 3, or what are you looking for something new that could further move along the business case for green hydrogen?
Yeah, that's for sure. Actually, yesterday the Parliament has agreed upon the 55% target, so that news came from yesterday. Good that you mentioned it. But the RED 2 was predominantly focused at the renewable energy only in part of the chain. And what we've learned is that it can give a lot of opportunity to develop a market, because what we need to understand, we're working on a solution that may not be competitive at this moment in time for several reasons. But we need that solution in order to get to a net zero economy. So if you don't use the time that we have at this moment in time to learn and to upscale, then we're not ready in time. So the opportunity is basically free up the blockers, understand that we can't take the jump at once, but we need to take it step by step. And the step-by-step also means that it may not be an ideal line from start to finish. But if we don't take a line and help, for instance, let me take one example on the additionality of renewable energy, which means that renewable power that is already used for electricity can't have, again, support for the hydrogen market. That does not make sense. We need to understand that it's not a competition between electricity or gas. We need to cooperate and work together to take step by step the available opportunities to develop and upscale to the right levels.
Okay, so RED 3 could be an opportunity to remove additional blockers that are still in place. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Renee. And Renee will be back with us towards the end of the event for a final discussion on what happens next after TSO 2020.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
We move then to our next speaker, who unfortunately is not able to be with us physically. Nonetheless, he's going to be with us virtually. And I'd like to introduce Tjisse Stelpstra, Regional Minister of the province of Drenthe. Drenthe, together with Groningen and Friesland, one of the three provinces here in the northern Netherlands intent on becoming a hydrogen valley. And Tjisse is going to be speaking to us from the location of one of TSO 2020's, I guess, proudest or biggest achievements, the Green Planet refueling station in Besse, which is serving hydrogen these days.
TSO 2020 is very important for the Northern Netherlands. It's about using existing gas infrastructure, using existing electricity infrastructure, and it's combining with the need for clean transport. I'm here in Besse at Green Planet, and you can see here in real how it's working from going from fossil to renewable. And this is very important because it's an important example of how we can do it in Europe, but it's also important for our own economy. It's very good that we are front runner in renewable energy.
Thank you, Tjisse, for that message from literally on the ground in Besse. We'd like to move on then to Patrick Knubben, here from the New Energy Coalition, which is a cross-sectoral organization here in the Netherlands devoted to the energy transition. It brings together policymakers, market players, and knowledge institutions to try and move forward and accelerate the energy transition here. Patrick is responsible for all work on green gases at the New Energy Coalition, and of course a substantial part of that today includes hydrogen. So you've also been at heart and center of the TSO 2020 project in many ways, and we look forward to hearing more about your experience of it and what it's taught us.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonja. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us and having this very nice online event on TSO 2020. Indeed, my name is Patrick Knubben, and I want to take you along on a flight through the region and there beyond on what Synergy as a project, what the TSO project has brought us. I named it TSO as an accelerator for the green hydrogen developments, not only in the region but also there beyond. and I hope I can give you some impressions on what it has been triggering, as also the previous speakers, and especially Renee, said. So you might recognize some of the issues, but it's really exhilarating what's all going on. Okay. First, for the people from abroad, where are we, and which are the elements in the TSO project? This is the start of the Cobra cable in Esbjerg. It lands in the Eemshaven. It will be transferred the electricity to Veendam, where it is, let's say, canned, tinned into hydrogen, and then is being evacuated in trailers to Pesse, where the fueling station is located, and that all happens in this yellow circle, which is our TSO main domain, but also the uptake and the start of our hydrogen valley. As that begins to take momentum, actually the region is very well fit to become a green hydrogen hub, which is one of the elements which triggered the start of TSO. And this picture is very lucid, illustrative, because it depicts wind on the sea, brought ashore, other forms of renewable generation from solar or onshore wind being reconverted, being stored, and then being evacuated in every aspect of energy. So in mobility, in industry, and in the built environment. So this picture is quite illustrative in that. But now let's go to how TSO looks and what it addresses. Well, this is one of the pictures from the call recognition. And the blue line is the Cobra cable, which lands in the Eemshaven. Then there is underground salt caverns to be developed in Veendam, which this is another framing on which this 1.1 megawatt electrolyzer has been established. And you know, hydrogen has something orange, something royal. It has been, let's say, jump started and opened by Our Majesty the King, as said previously. But the hydrogen needs to get from, let's say, the energy sector to the mobility sector. Here we found Green Planet as a multi-fuel station, very willing to uptake this challenge, because it was a challenge, believe me. It wasn't easy. And this is a night view of the field, but this station is now being commissioned. I think Edward Dorton will certainly get onto that in the content domain. And there are trailers as well, which travel around the hydrogen. And as we all know, hydrogen doesn't travel very well, so you need to be very cautious. You have to know what you're doing, and that is something which we managed in the process and in the project. And of course, this project cannot be executed without help from governments. Europe by name of SINEA, but also our Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. So a lot of parties are involved. And as Renee just said, it is indeed true that we need to jumpstart this. This is the first investment plan for hydrogen in the northern Netherlands. I think it was presented 2019, if I'm correct. And that has been the basis for our next step to become a hydrogen valley in the region. And that is something, you know, which jumpstarts, accelerates, and gives a lot of buzz. The above logo is the region, and the lower logo is the, let's say, the logo of the project Heaven. And now, well, and as we state, you are very welcome to be in the first hydrogen valley of Europe. And this is a still. There's an animation behind it. I will not show that. That will be something you can do at home, because it takes 3 minutes, and we want to keep it concise. And these kinds of projects, which are so complex and so, let's say, big and integrated, because until recently all the projects were, let's say, individual, working in splendid isolation, and we managed to have them integrated. About 20 projects, which was, you can believe me, a big task. And it cannot be done, again, without support from the private parties who do all the investments, and the support from the European Union, but especially in this case, the fuel cell and hydrogen undertaking, without whom this could not have been possible. We need this, and it's, I can always say, keep up the good work, guys. It's really very important. This is a frightening picture of the project. We'll step over that, but it indicates complexity. But if you look through it somewhat more in detail, you can see 4 clusters in the brackets, and in the brackets, in the clusters, the projects do their let's say operation, and manifest itself in a fully functioning, integrated green hydrogen chain, demonstrating that this works. So we have a nice sequence from TSO, which was the foundation with all the parties, and there we'll come to that somewhat later. That has resulted in let's say, in the support, the idea of an investment plan. That has resulted in the Hydrogen Valley application in the project. And again, I want to emphasize, we cannot do this alone. We need the help from Europe, and as you mentioned, we will come to that later again with the package which will be announced shortly. Well, this picture is also known. The yellow lines are the let's say, the hydrogen backbone, and the backbone needs to be fed with hydrogen. So we need to increase the production of hydrogen. And as Renee said, that is going on. That is a task in which we must keep the eye on the ball. We need to have the offshore wind power. We need to have the fitting regulations. Everything over this whole value chain needs to be aligned to make this, let's say, this ambition real. Because we need the hydrogen, we need the green hydrogen to match our climate ambitions. So the policy needs to be fit for purpose. And one investment plan, and the project leads to a bigger investment plan. This, as indicated by Renee already, this is a €9 billion plan, and it's a circle. So the heart of this investment plan is in the Hydrogen Valley region, and that's fantastic. But we are not alone. We're not that's by ourselves on the planet actually. So our next step will be to connect hydrogen valleys, because hydrogen valleys are individual regions which want to uptake the hydrogen challenge. And I think the concept being developed by the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking by Bart Bieberg and his colleagues is really a fantastic story. It helps regions to get into this business. And here you can see, let's see, the green dots, these are the 3 hydrogen valleys up to now, more or less the 3 musketeers. So we must not stay alone. That's the big hit project on the Orkneys, the Heaven project in our region, and the Green Highlands project in Mallorca. But you do see other yellow dots. These are hydrogen valleys in the making. And this is really exhilarating, because it gives momentum and impetus to all the regions who want to step in hydrogen. So it's a model to help you get into business. But again, we're not alone. The Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, under the guidance of the Commission with Mission Innovation, have presented a study in which I think 42 hydrogen valleys all around the world are identified. I'm very happy to say that our region is one of the key hydrogen valleys in that respect. Not because it's the biggest, but it's fully integrated. It's complete, and in a dedicated region, and that's really something to be proud of, which we need to feed on and do our things with. But there are other things going on. Els de Wit from the ministry, and I think Mrs. Mariette Van Empel will touch upon that as well. You need to combine energy to the mobility sector. And here you see a excerpt from the North Sea Baltic connector, connecting, let's say, the Rotterdam region as a logistical hub with, at the end, let's say, the Estonian region, and in between there's a very big corridor on which a lot of transport, long haul and heavy trucks are running, and they need fuel, they need hydrogen, so we need to help them. And we think that the Hydrogen Valley concept can be operational to fuel the corridor. And as I said, we're not alone, so we're collaborating with our Hydrogen Valley project colleagues in Lower Saxony, in Hamburg, Schleswig-Holstein, and further to the east, even up to Estonia. So this generates a lot of momentum, and I think Els and Mariette from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management will touch upon, let's say, the High 3 and the Rhine project, which are exemplary in this respect. And just a very short wrap-up on TSO. It demonstrates that the combination of harvesting electrons and canning the energy in the form of hydrogen works, makes it tangible. I think the synergy concept works. Edward will also get to that, and the colleagues who are going more into depth with that. It accelerates the uptake of hydrogen as a fuel for mobility, and it can be replicated. It can be replicated in various sizes, from a small to an extra large one, because that's what we need to do. It promotes and I think it should stimulate, let's say, the further development of the PCI concept. The Cobra Cable is a PCI project, and make the 10E policy also fit for purpose to transfer the energy to the markets. It also promotes the 10T domain, because Synergy, our TSO project, is a combination of 10E and 10T, which was, let's say, also for the CNEA, formerly known as INEA, an experiment, and also for the, let's say, the directorates Move and Energy, to see how this works. Well, as stated, it contributes to the development of investment agendas, not only in our region, but hopefully also in others. That is work being done amongst others in the S3 platform. It created the foundations for the development of our first hydrogen valley. That is really important to notice. This is not a one-party, single theme activity. It's a really a cross-thematic activity. And it accelerates the deployment and development of cross-border hydrogen valleys. It initiates, as I stated, these projects like High 3, Rhine, etc. So it's bringing a lot of momentum on the place. And we think that TSO advocates the design of novel synergy calls. I think very much needed. I think it would be wise to take this into consideration as Commission and as European parties to take this chance. It fits perfectly with national and international hydrogen ambitions and policies, like our national hydrogen policy, the European hydrogen strategy, and there beyond. And it actually gives a direct answer to the request of Mrs. von der Leyen during her State of the Union speech on September 17th last year, where she states that she wants to see more hydrogen valleys in Europe. So come over to our region, see how we do it, take the best of it home, and we are very much willing to reach out. And again, it's full in line with the Green Deal targets, and it was already mentioned, this helps regions to become fit for 55. Fit for 55, not relating to age, but relating to CO2 emission reduction. We need to do that. That package will become online recently. And of course, to wrap up, this cannot be done without fantastic partners. Gasunie, Remco has put a tremendous lot of work in it, and it has a result. Of course, thank ourselves, skip that, TenneT, TU Delft, EASE, the European Association for Storage of Energy, Green Planet, and of course the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. But we also need to thank CNEA. We need to thank the European Commission, who, let's say, of the European Union, who also facilitate this through a wise policy, and of course our RVO, our state enterprise, to also facilitate us with that. And this is how far I would go. And join us at the grand final on October 6th, live in Passe. This is what it has brought about, and probably a lot more. And we will come to thanking the people at the end, because a lot of people, parties, were involved, and I think it's really a success story, with some hurdles, but the challenge is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for a whirlwind, but I think very comprehensive overview of everything the project has achieved, and also how many partners it has involved. I think what stays with me is that this project was really the trigger for so much of the other activity, projects, investments that we hear and read about today. This really, and Renee had already mentioned it, the roots of this project were back in 2016, when hydrogen wasn't really on the map for very many people yet. So it was really the trigger for something much bigger. Yeah,
this is really a tremendous pilot which has, let's say, resulted in an uptake of green hydrogen in society. Yeah. At the moment we started, there wasn't so much hydrogen named and addressed in policies. Now it's all over the place, and that's very good and very positive. So we need to keep the eye on the ball and keep progressing. Yeah.
Patrick's going to be back with us later to talk about what comes, and you've already hinted a little bit at that, but what comes next in terms of priorities, how the project might be followed up, regulatory, political changes that are still needed to accelerate things further. That's going to be in our discussion towards the end of the event. For now, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And you left us on a note of the European Commission and CNEA, very appropriately, to help me introduce our next speaker, Beatrice Koda, who is head of unit for the Connecting Europe facility, a new renewable energy financing mechanism at SENEA, which is, of course, the European Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Agency. That's part of the European Commission. She's been heading this up for the past 3 years, has been with the Commission much longer, always working in some way connected to energy. Originally a chemical engineer, and I saw you have a PhD in energy technologies and a postgrad in economics, so I cannot think of someone better qualified to be working on the financing of energy infrastructure. So looking forward to hearing from you on, I guess, your views on a project like TSO2020, the synergy concept, and what we might expect going forward in this vein. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonia. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Sorry for not being with you physically, but I'm very glad to be at least connected virtually with you. And first of all, for this event, and first of all, really congratulations to the TSO2020 project and to all stakeholders involved for the big achievements. And it's good that really we are tackling already the future, the challenges ahead, and the plans to build really the new, let's say, the new, in concrete, really the new hydrogen strategy. If we go to the next slide, I'll really try, let's say, to outline very briefly what I'll be talking about. My presentation will focus, in fact, what has been done so far from the point of view of the Connecting Europe Facility program concerning, let's say, hydrogen, how, let's say, this has been done in the what we call, let's say, the CEF1, so the program that has been basically closed, but I will also present the possibilities for funding for hydrogen and synergies under the future financial schemes, in particular the programs that SENEA is taking care of with the new mandate. I'd like to reiterate what, let's say, the previous speakers have said, that, let's say, now really we are looking at hydrogen also from, let's say, the funding point of view in the new policy context at European level, so the new hydrogen strategy since last year, since July 2020. And then the upcoming, let's say, revisions of the TEN-E policy, of the TEN-T, and the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, which make hydrogen playing an important role for sector integration and electricity market, and for decarbonizing also the industrial sector in line with the priorities of the Green Deal. If we go to, I think, the third slide, I'll just really want to say, if you can move also to the next one. I just really want to steal for a moment the floor to say that when, let's say, TSO2020 was implemented, we have moved gradually, let's say, from INEA to SENEA. So at the beginning, let's say, we were only in charge of the Connecting Europe Facility program and the Horizon 2020 transport and energy part sectors, but let's say gradually we have expanded our mandate, and we moved to implement the Innovation Fund, which is also very relevant, of course, in the context of hydrogen projects. And now we are, in the new mandate, we are, let's say, managing a much bigger, let's say, portfolio of EU-funded programs, which are of relevance here. So the LIFE, the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, the Just Transition Mechanism, the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism, Innovation Fund I mentioned, and then, of course, is very important, the continuation of Connecting Europe Facility and Horizon in the climate, energy, and transport. That makes that we will have, let me say, a more important role to play in providing policy feedback and exploiting to the Commission and to our stakeholders, and to exploit more, let's say, synergies between sectors and programs. Next slide shows really in a nutshell what have been the main results of the Connecting Europe Facility. That's the program where TSO2020 was, let's say, was framed. The program has concluded, let's say, on paper, because many projects are still ongoing and will run really until, let's say, 2025 and even beyond. So in CEF Synergy, we have managed a portfolio of around 149 actions for 0.7 billion in the energy infrastructure context, and in CEF Transport, the portfolio allocated was around 23 billion. And then we had this small experiment, as it was recalled before already, the synergy program, or the synergy call, which represented a very small share of the overall portfolio. But I think I can agree, let's say, that with the statements made before, that this synergy experiment will make us, or has allowed us to build on it in the future. And if we consider now the new programs, synergies will play also in CEF a more important role. What has CEF Connecting Europe facility done? If we can move to the next slide, concerning hydrogen so far. Well, basically, I think the hydrogen funding was really framed with a focus on mobility. So hydrogen was mainly, let's say, in CEF Transport, with the objective, let's say, on technology and innovation, and there were actions which were funded. They were 11, related to 15 member states and 120 million of support, which focused on hydrogen refueling stations, including electrolyzers, and that made to build 130 refueling stations and more than 600 hydrogen buses and 10 hydrogen trolleys. But let's say another, let's say, work stream was to develop synergies with other programs. So there were, let's say, a few examples there, and I want to mention here, for example, the Merlin project, of which one part was, let's say, financed through the CEF Transport with the creation of hydrogen stations. But another part, let's say, was financed through a deployment of fleet of hydrogen fuel cell car through the LIFE program. And an additional part related to buses was supported by the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking. So again, this was another experiment in synergies and trying to combine funding possibilities. Again, this will be, I think, made more easy in the next framework program, and I will touch upon that in a moment. And then, of course, we have the TSO2020 project in the CEF Synergy call. If we look now at the future and what, let's say, the new funding perspective are offering, let's say, for the energy, the transport, and also, let's say, the hydrogen projects in terms also of sector integration. And if we can move to the next slide, I will present, let's say, I will start presenting the new CEF program. We have with a budget, let's say, of 33 billion euro in transport, energy, and digital. In transport, we'll have around 25 billion euro, in energy 5.84, and in digital 2 billion. I think here, let's say, the objectives relate, of course, like in the past, to develop and modernize the trans-European networks. But there are, let's say, new emphasis. And one of them is the facilitation of cross-border cooperation in the field of renewable energy and promotion of sustainable mobility. And then also the emphasis on synergies among sectors. That's more, let's say, there is more emphasis on it in the new legal base, which will make, let's say, possible for the Commission and for SINEA to exploit the concept of synergies more broadly than what has been done, let's say, in the past. And this, again, in the new policy context, for example, in the context of energy, the revision of the TENI regulation will impact the CEF energy program, as hydrogen, that will allow also the funding of hydrogen projects, in particular in terms, let's say, of pipelines, but as well also electrolyzers. And the emphasis on cross-border cooperation in the field of renewable energy will also offer possibilities for renewable hydrogen production when there is a component of exactly cross-border component in the project. The next slide goes more in detail to talk about the synergies. So we have, let's say, synergies within the sectors of CEF, so within transport and energy mainly, I would say, but also I'd like to emphasize synergies with other instruments. As I mentioned before, the synergies between energy and transport can be harnessed through specific cross-sectorial work programs and calls. That's in the new legal basis of CEF. Projects eligible in one sector, so for example in energy, may include ancillary investments from another CEF sector, so up to 20%. So that will make projects combining, let's say, transport and energy components and digital as well easier, let's say, to be created bottom up, while respecting the large eligibility criteria in CEF. And then again, as I mentioned, the new window for cross-border renewable projects will be also an important window to be exploited. I'd like to mention here that we are already seeing that the new instruments which were created are like the Innovation Fund, which is also managed by SINEA. Is, let's say, we see already the results of the first calls that were launched, a huge interest in hydrogen to support innovative projects in the field. So we had already in Innovation Fund a call for large-scale projects and a call for small-scale projects, and a majority of projects were really linked to hydrogen use or production, hydrogen use also in the industrial sector. So that's really, I think, a sign of interest by the entire community. And then, of course, last but not least, let's not forget that also synergies with Horizon Europe. They are just launching, let's say, the first call in the Cluster 5, Climate, Energy and Mobility, will be also a very important funding instrument there. I would like to conclude with, let's say, a look on the lessons learned that we as a funding body and in charge, let's say, of the technical and financial monitoring of the project TSO2020 have witnessed. So let's maybe present a little bit some takeaways in terms of the lessons learned from the TSO2020 implementation. And here I'd really like a bit, think I'm aligning with, let's say, messages from previous speakers, what has been observed. So I think, again, to make projects like TSO2020, which are, let's say, in the infrastructure sector, but also combining, the sector of production, and they are really, innovative in the concept and in bringing together a number of stakeholders to reach these, let's say, innovative objectives, and in line, let's say, with all what other, let's say, projects that we observe in the infrastructure sector at SINEA. I think to make, let's say, to ensure a successful and a smooth implementation of the action, what is important is to align the policy priorities and have a stable regulatory framework. Ideally, this should be done before applying for funds. We know that, let's say, it's not easy, and that changes are always coming in the middle. But that's really important to ensure, let's say, that the action or the project can go smoothly. Here I'm referring in particular to the permitting processes. We saw that was difficult. So a stable regulatory framework is needed to ensure smooth implementation. And here I'm really referring to the so-called nitrogen crisis. This is what we have observed in this project, as well as in other related projects that are funded by CEF and that are taking place in the Netherlands. Another point is that also in this type of projects, which it's related to permitting, but more broadly, is to ensure public acceptance and engage with citizens and local authorities at an early stage and ensure communication with all parties along the way. So it is never too early to, let's say, in a project, I think, to engage with local parties and local authorities to go through the permitting process and to go, let's say, through to the acceptance of the citizens. And all of that builds also in having, let's say, a very good risk assessment, which is important to put the right preventive measures in place. And right, really to conclude here, I hope, let's say, that was useful. From our side at CEF, the next steps are to launch, let's say, the first calls for CEF2 in hydrogen and in transport and energy, and that crossing fingers should take place after the summer. So stay tuned there. And again, I think congratulations, and from CEF, we also look forward to the closing event, to the grand finale, as it's been called, in October of TSO 2020. And thanks to the coordinator and to all the stakeholders involved in the project for the great collaboration. And again, we're really pleased to see the results and the promising future developments in the Netherlands and beyond. Thank you very much. I'm concluding here my intervention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Beatrice. I think it was a great overview of what's been and what's to come. One quick follow-up in terms of, you said synergies will play a more important role in future. I don't know whether you can answer this, but can you be any more specific? Because when I look at the numbers, so far we had you said yourself it's been a small share. We had 27 billion in the CEF for transport and for energy combined, but just 20 million for actual synergy projects. So what kind of scale up can we expect going forward? Can you say any more on that?
I think it's too early to put any numbers on future synergies. Let's say a synergy sector or cross-sector will look like concerning CEF. What I was trying to say is that now in the new CEF make possible for projects to combine already up to 20% of their investment in the projects, up to 20% of the eligible cost in an application. So you don't need to launch, let's say, a synergy call to make this 20%, let's say, of investment cost related to a different sector in your project application to make it possible. So that's already making easier for projects combining investment in more than one sector to apply. And then it is also foreseen that there will be specific cross-sectoral work programs and calls. They will also receive a highest co-funding rate, but we are not yet there, I think, to tell when this will be launched and what will be, let's say, the money tag associated to that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. And one other question, and then we'll let you go, which is you mentioned 10E and 10T, and they're obviously being revised, and that has an impact on what the CEF can do. So you said when it comes to 10E, for example, in terms of hydrogen, it will allow hydrogen funding in terms of pipeline infrastructure, electrolyzers. What about the 10T revision, which is still to come? What might that mean for hydrogen?
I am not really the right person to talk about 10T because I'm really more on the energy on the
Okay.
energy sector. So
Okay.
it's,
No,
I
fair
think
enough.
there you are not with the correct interlocutor, but yeah. So I really prefer not to not to
Okay.
reply to this question if you don't mind. But clearly, let's say from the point of view of hydrogen infrastructure, from let's say the energy angle, we all the developments in terms of cross-border infrastructure and backbones that were presented today. We see, let's say, that there are other member states in other parts of Europe also doing similar developments. So that's and plans for connecting from a cross-border point of view. So for sure, that's going to be really a key new area in TENI and in CEF Energy.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution this morning. And I imagine we all look forward to seeing you soon and staying in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you. That brings us to our final speaker in this first part before we break for coffee. And next, I'd like to welcome Mariette Van Empel, here from the Dutch Ministry for Infrastructure and Water Management, where she is director of the Sustainable Mobility Program. She's also done a lot of work on sustainable energy in the past and headed up the Dutch National Hydrogen Platform in years past, as well as working across a range of other ministries in the realms of transport, environment, water and energy. So, Mariette, over to you for a Dutch perspective on TSO 2020, what it's taught us and where we go from here. Hoping Mariette is with us, of course.
I am with you. Can you see and hear me?
We can't see you, but we can see... Yes, now we can see you. Perfect. There you are.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for the introduction, and it's with great pleasure that to be present today on this event, this closing event of the TSO 2020, and share with you some of our experiences on pathway of smart and sustainable mobility, and which requires a shift to more renewable energy. Maybe to show the first slide, please. Yeah, thank you very much. When this project started by 2017, our world looked very different from now. And in the Netherlands, hydrogen was recognized as one of the possible options for decarbonizing transport by 2014 already. And we made a sustainable fuel strategy for mobility. And at that time, we started realizing that if we had to work towards decarbonization of our transport system, we would need to address the full hydrogen value chain, starting with a shift from grey to green hydrogen, and thus needing green electrons for green hydrogen. This is where we felt the need for more integration of transport and energy policies, and saw an opportunity to create a stronger link between the decarbonization of the transport and the electricity and the gas sector. Next slide, please. So the Synergy call, this window of opportunity was spurred by the European Commission initiative in CEF, and to create this new initiative with the Synergy call, allowing interested stakeholders from transport and in energy domains to come together. And it's through this initiative that a concrete opportunity occurred to have first living labs in the Netherlands and Austria, and exploring these new interdependencies between electrons, molecules, and mobility. And the Synergy call has proved to be a unique instrument that has sparked cross-sectoral collaboration and needed to fulfill our pledges for the Paris Climate Agreement and the upcoming Fit for 55 package. So the northern regions of the Netherlands managed to get all the relevant actors over there together, and they found it eligible with their project proposal for the TSO 2020, which was funded by the Synergy program and co-funded by the Dutch government. And it's with great pleasure that I attend this formal closing event of the project that has shown us that we need to work across sectors, realizing new value chains together on our connected transition pathways for mobility and energy. The next slide, please. So, from fossil to green hydrogen, we'll be hearing more about the results of the projects in the other presentations, and just Beatrice Koda also today showed us some of the results. So I won't go into too much detail for that in the Dutch perspective. But what we see is that the north of the Netherlands, they have shifted from a highly dependent fossil-based economy to a new, more sustainable one, being with the green hydrogen. And this is, however, a major transition that we're now making, not only in the Netherlands, but also in Europe and worldwide. And in hindsight, we can now say that the Synergy project contributed largely to kickstarting this transition in the northern Netherlands. And this resulted, among many other factors, in other projects, such as the European Hydrogen Valley Heaven project. And I'm really convinced that Synergy helped substantially in creating the right circumstances for acquiring the Heaven project. And in developing the proposal, the Heaven proposal, the north of the Netherlands and their neighboring German regions teamed up. And as I understand, the concept of hydrogen valleys is being further developed under new programs for the FCHEU. And I believe this is the way right forward to move forward. The next slide, please. So what have we been learning? Learned by doing, we have to develop a hydrogen economy by creating new and integrated full value chains. Of course, these value chains, as I've mentioned before, are not only something regional. Given the phase hydrogen is in, we have to start doing things where people can see how their actions contribute to the bigger context. The other side is that globally, in Europe and on the national level, we continue to integrate our relevant policies in order to combat climate change. This requires scaling up production to terawatt facilities, constructing hydrogen backbones in the Netherlands and throughout Europe, and importing green hydrogen from all over the world and exporting it to the rest of Europe. It all starts with testing and experiencing at smaller scales. So there are new issues coming up. What are, for example, the technical implications of what we want? What are the new business cases that can replace the existing ones? Is there public acceptance? Is it safe? Are the safety regulations in place? And how can we get from pilots to demonstrations to scale up and in the end get to large-scale production? So what are new market opportunities? And many of these issues have been raised in the European projects like TSO2020 and Heaven. The next slide, please. And it's the last one also. So what's next? We are on the verge of the large-scale introduction of the hydrogen in many different sectors and applications. And Europe has set ambitious targets for CO2 reduction and has presented the hydrogen strategy in the Green Deal. But upcoming is the 55 package, which will push much more for integrated policies between transport, climate and energy, and allowing us to make headway on the long-term pathway of decarbonization. And at the national level, we are at the moment drafting a private and public sector together, a national hydrogen program. And for transport, there is an action plan for hydrogen in mobility. And that's also a public-private partnership. So policies and plans are put in place, but we need something more. What we have noticed that we really need a clear legal framework. And very important is the certification scheme for green hydrogen to facilitate the production and the import. Also, many companies have asked me for this certification scheme and to speed it up. Next thing we need is, I think, an obligation for hydrogen under the Alternative Fuel Directive. Thirdly, financial instruments. It has been mentioned before. To stimulate the market in all phases of the value chain, not only in regions, but also in transport and energy networks. And then more synergy calls, finally, allowing, I think, stakeholders to innovate, roll out, and scale up in an integrated manner. So hydrogen in transport mainly makes sense in heavy duty and long haul applications, and this requires almost by definition a European dimension and rollout. So whether we look at battery electric or hydrogen, we'll need energy production and transport infrastructure fit to provide the energy at the right place, at the right time, and in the right quantities. So I think Synergy seems to be the best instrument to provide in linkages and bringing those separate worlds together, as Synergy has also done in the Netherlands. And with all the valuable deliverables today on the table, I can only say that we look back on a unique partnership with transport and energy stakeholders and express the wish that with the latest revision of CEF now taking place, new synergy goals will come forward and foster more of these partnerships, allowing timely investments being made under the ground to power decarbonized transport that we are realizing above ground. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariette, for that overview. I think it brings everything together nicely just before we break for coffee. One or two questions, if I may. We won't be long. One is, you mentioned, so there's a national hydrogen program under development with an action plan for hydrogen in mobility. What kind of role do you foresee for hydrogen in sustainable mobility in a broader sense in the Netherlands? Because there's obviously other options out there, other kinds of alternative fuels, electric and so forth. So how important is hydrogen in sustainable mobility?
Hydrogen is very important because what we see that for the heavy transport and, for example, for inland shipping, battery electricity will not be a solution. So we want to make the transformation from fossil through biofuels to hydrogen, which is completely clean if it's green hydrogen. So very important in transport.
Okay, and particularly so heavy duty vehicles and inland shipping would be two good examples of sectors where it's appropriate.
Where it's really for the long term to electrify. But if you're looking at the moment, we also have a lot of examples where we are experimenting in the Netherlands. It's also used in buses mainly, I think. We have the canals in Amsterdam, for the shipping, and there we have some experiments. So there are a lot of opportunities and in cleaning vehicles. So it's not only for the long haul transport, but I think for the future, if we really want to decarbonize, it's essential that also those sectors where it's quite difficult to use battery electric, that we use hydrogen.
Okay, and then the only other question was, in spite of all the initiatives and all the enthusiasm and all the projects, there's still often questions of are we going far enough? Are we thinking far enough? So I think back, Renee Schritz this morning, for example, said if we want 3 or 4 gigawatts of electrolyzers in 2030, well, we need another 3 or 4 gigawatts of offshore wind. Similarly, on the financial front, I've heard at other events people say, well, Germany has put forward 9 billion in public money. Where's the equivalent in the Netherlands? So are we thinking on things like the deployment of offshore wind, like money, simply cash? Is also from the Dutch government thinking big enough on those fronts?
Yeah, I think if we have the Dutch national hydrogen program, which is a joint undertaking from different ministries of the Netherlands. So it's the whole cabinet has said hydrogen is very important for economy, not only for mobility but also for the industry. So it's really core for the future to decarbonize. Then it's always difficult to find money at the right moment. At this moment, we have a cabinet which is demissionaire. I don't know the word in English, but it means that the new cabinet will make new plans. And hydrogen is really on their mind. So I hope there will be more money and cash for that. And at the same time, it's I think a very good idea to see how we can join forces also with the electricity sector, who's making more plans for wind energy, and but also maybe the import from other countries. So I think it's not only one specific point, but we have to look and see through Europe how we can make this work throughout Europe.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. And I'd say, well, we'll watch this space and look forward to future updates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And that takes us into a short coffee break, 5 or 10 minutes. We'll try and resume shortly, just after, a minute or two after 10:30. So this is your chance to just take a break, and we'll see you very soon.
When it comes to hydrogen. So far, European efforts concerning hydrogen have been individual initiatives for the most part. The time has come for an integrated approach, to gather our best ideas and put them to work in an actual region. The European Union has identified the Northern Netherlands as Hydrogen Valley. That's not surprising. In one ride, you'll find everything you need for a green, hydrogen-based economy. Sustainable energy sources, generation, storage, transport, as well as applications in industry and applications in mobility and our day-to-day environment. This time, the project partners are not researchers, they are makers. They will make the hydrogen economy flow. To achieve this, the project comprises of 4 clusters and will be realized by the end of 2025. With the region's green power converted to hydrogen, we will be working on storage and infrastructure, making hydrogen a raw material for our industry, turning hydrogen into heat and power for residential areas. And it will give us mobility, green mobility. This sectoral integration is rarely seen. We are doing it, right in this valley. We are progressing on some 30 sub-projects we have prepared over the past 2 years, hand in hand with public and private parties. We're working hard to set an example for Europe to follow. Hydrogen Valley. As we proceed towards a climate-neutral 2050, we are reaching the point where we put theory into practice, especially when it comes to hydrogen. So far, European efforts concerning hydrogen have been individual initiatives for the most part. The time has come for an integrated approach, to gather our best ideas and put them to work in an actual region. The European Union has identified the Northern Netherlands as Hydrogen Valley. That's not surprising. In one ride, you'll find everything you need for a green, hydrogen-based economy. Sustainable energy sources, generation, storage, transport, as well as applications in industry and applications in mobility and our day-to-day environment. This time, the project partners are not researchers, they are makers. They will make the hydrogen economy flow. To achieve this, the project comprises of 4 clusters and will be realized by the end of 2025. With the region's green power converted to hydrogen, we will be working on storage and infrastructure, making hydrogen a raw material for our industry, turning hydrogen into heat and power for residential areas. And it will give us mobility, green mobility. This sectoral integration is rarely seen. We are doing it, right in this valley. We are progressing on some 30 sub-projects we have prepared over the past 2 years, hand in hand with public and private parties. We're working hard to set an example for Europe to follow. Hydrogen Valley. As we proceed towards a climate-neutral 2050, we are reaching the point where we put theory into practice, especially when it comes to hydrogen. So far, European efforts concerning hydrogen have been individual initiatives for the most part. The time has come for an integrated approach, to gather our best ideas and put them to work in an actual region. The European Union has identified the Northern Netherlands as Hydrogen Valley. That's not surprising. In one ride, you'll find everything you need for a green, hydrogen-based economy. Sustainable energy sources, generation, storage, transport, as well as applications in industry and applications in mobility and our day-to-day environment. This time, the project partners are not researchers, they are makers. They will make the hydrogen economy flow. To achieve this, the project comprises of 4 clusters and will be realized by the end of 2025. With the region's green power converted to hydrogen, we will be working on storage and infrastructure, making hydrogen a raw material for our industry, turning hydrogen into heat and power for residential areas. And it will give us mobility, green mobility. This sectoral integration is rarely seen. We are doing it, right in this valley. We are progressing on some 30 sub-projects we have prepared over the past 2 years, hand in hand with public and private parties. We're working hard to set an example for Europe to follow. Hydrogen Valley. As we proceed towards a climate-neutral 2050, we are reaching the point where we put theory into practice, especially when it comes to hydrogen. So far, European efforts concerning hydrogen have been individual initiatives for the most part. The time has come for an integrated approach, to gather our best ideas and put them to work in an actual region. The European Union has identified the Northern Netherlands as Hydrogen Valley. That's not surprising. In one ride, you'll find everything you need for a green, hydrogen-based economy. Sustainable energy sources, generation, storage, transport, as well as applications in industry and applications in mobility and our day-to-day environment. This time, the project partners are not researchers, they are makers. They will make the hydrogen economy flow. To achieve this, the project comprises of 4 clusters and will be realized by the end of 2025. With the region's green power converted to hydrogen, we will be working on storage and infrastructure, making hydrogen a raw material for our industry, turning hydrogen into heat and power for residential areas. And it will give us mobility, green mobility. This sectoral integration is rarely seen. We are doing it, right in this valley. We are progressing on some 30 sub-projects we have prepared over the past 2 years, hand in hand with public and private parties. We're working hard to set an example for Europe to follow. Hydrogen Valley.
Morning, the closing event of the TSO 2020 project. Thank you for joining us. I'm here in Groningen. So the second part of the program is digging into a bit more detail on the actual results of TSO 2020. And we're going to talk through the various work packages, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we'll round off with a short discussion after that, looking at what comes next. So first of all, work package 2. And this focused on studying the stability of international electricity systems and therefore how power to hydrogen fits into that and can play a positive role in enhancing electricity system stability. Presenting on behalf of this package is Dr. Jose Rueda, Associate Professor leading research on stability, control and optimization of electrical power systems at Delft, University of Technology. He also chairs various technical committees at international organizations relating to this, so a true expert. And he's going to be joined at the beginning by his colleague Mart van der Meijden, also from the TU Delft, and also working at TenneT. So I'll hand over to the pair of you to talk us through what TSO 2020 taught us about system stability. Go ahead. We can't hear you, so I think you're muted, I imagine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
I think Mar was trying to speak first, but probably he had some problems.
Now he's
mic.
on pause, I see. Yeah, that doesn't look promising.
All right, then I will start with the presentation. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I have summarized what we did in this activity and what it means in the context of future power systems, low inertia with new physical principles. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is one intro that Mark wanted to do. And we was also a point of a driver for our research and involvement in this project, and especially for the activity 2, because of the different technical issues that a future system will have if the whole electricity supply is coming from renewables, ensuring its resiliency, so reliability, that we can deliver energy at any time and also survive to major events that's like sudden loss of components or short circuits, for instance, is not going to be feasible if we don't have the support from the hydrogen infrastructure. I will elaborate a bit more on this, on how this looks like from the work package or activity 2 in this project in the next slides. Can we please move to the next one? So we'll show about 5 to 6 slides going through the whole activity 2, its scope, approach, what are key results, and concluding remarks with outlook for future studies and research. Can we please go to the next? So this is an illustration of how our future system will look like. Onshore, we have there with some highlight with a black ellipse there, and the offshore, right? The offshore systems, there's a very ambitious plans to build gigantic infrastructure with many wind farms in the North Sea, for instance, which will have a lot of gigawatts that theoretically will replace onshore generation, right? And in onshore, we expect to decommission or phase out a lot of conventional power plants. So what's the problem here? Is that basically, as we see from this table in the figure, is that this new futuristic system has serious issues with the control and its stability. What does it mean? That if serious events, like as I mentioned previously, the sudden loss of a component, a short circuit, for instance, right, happens, the systems will not be able to survive if not equipped with new control principles, for instance. And this means we should be able to have reactions that are much faster, which means much faster than what we usually see or understand from an electrical system. Faster means lower than a second, and even in a scale of microseconds of milliseconds. So we have here the focus of what was our work. There is some relevant research also that is ongoing covering other aspects which are more related to market or to operation. However, one big issue and that has to be urgently researched is how we're going to do tasks that were guaranteed in classical systems for stability and control with conventional plants. So, and especially how electrolyzers can support in this. Can they, for instance, take over control actions that were done by a coal-fired power plant or of a gas-fired power plant? Gas-fired power plants are highly controllable plants that really have a lot in balancing, also in millisecond scale. Can we go to the next task, please? To the next slide. So this is an illustration of what we wanted to investigate. So we keep more or less kind of conventional system with electrolyzers being mainly consumers, not having any special control system. And if we have, for instance, the sudden loss of a gigawatt wind farm offshore, then we will have a response like the one in the black line there. The frequency going down to very low values, unacceptable values, right? The lowest point is called, in this case, this physical parameter is called the system frequency in hertz. Ideally, every device in the system will operate with 50 hertz, which is a standard value. But if there is this contingency and the electrolyzers are doing nothing, for instance, then we'll have the time response in a very optimistic case. So we will be able to recover from this very low or high frequency variation, but very slowly, and it will take a lot of effort and resources, which will also affect in other time scales like minutes and hours. From an economic point of view, we'll have to redispatch, we'll have to reaccommodate, and this will happen very, very often, so leading to a tremendous increase in the cost for reaccommodating the system to cope with imbalances that could have been better mitigated in milliseconds. Therefore, the motivation of this project investigating how can we do, and ideally we wanted to have electrolyzers taking over control actions that have been exclusively done just by power plants so far. And ideally, in a new situation in future in which electrolyzers can support in milliseconds or microseconds time scale, then we'll have a response like the one in green. So we can mitigate these frequency excursions much better than if we use current knowledge, current methods, even apply it to electrolyzers. And then with this one, we have a more prompter recovery that will require much less energy and will affect much less the operational performance of the system, and also will reduce a lot or nullify the transactions that will be needed in the markets of ancillary services to restore, in this case, a parameter radio frequency to the nominal value. So what is the value of electrolyzers? And this was the main action for research here. And then this research parameter, what we wanted to look at is call it fast acting power regulation. So basically means in which way we could modify the consumption on electrolyzer on a millisecond time scale to help with this mitigation in that time scale. Can we go to the next slide, please? So then we took as a case study a futuristic situation in the north of the Netherlands. We have it there in the map, some highlights of different components that were taken into account in our software-based model. We have there a radar substation in Eemshaven different important controllable components like the NordNet high voltage direct current link, coax cable interconnector, and then other transmission lines like with the 180 kilovolt highlighted with red, and then other voltage levels at 220 kilovolt, 110 kilovolts. So more or less the northern of the Netherlands modeled in details in a supercomputer. We also added a theoretical situation of having 300 megawatt electrolyzers close to this station in Eemshaven. And then an important here point of research was, for instance, what if we use the electrolyzer response in this milliseconds time scale to do control actions instead of, for instance, altering the transactions through NordNet or coax cable to do the same task, because that will have some cost implications on one side. And on one side, if we distort these operations of the interconnectors, they might not be highly effective, or they can be electrolyzed even more effective than these changes. Therefore, we created a very detailed model in a supercomputer. We have there in this square in the middle, to the left side, an illustration. This is just for illustration and a schematic of how the diagram of the system will look like in a typical power system simulation platform. So we use advanced tool because for futuristic systems we have to look into much higher detail of modeling, because there is a lot of phenomena that is excited because of not having a system dominated with conventional power plants with a lot of heavy machinery, like rotating masses in hydro plants or in thermal plants. Can we please go to the next slide? So first question important as well here is how we model electrolyzer, because there was no generic model that could also be used in future studies. So we need to develop from the scratch a model that is going to be used in this project. Is also going to be the base for any future program concerning to improvements in electrolyzer technology to support electrical systems. There have been some models before this project that were applicable for electrolyzers, but mainly for long-term time scales, like minutes, 2 hours. So just to quickly check variation of consumption and then do some techno-economic assessment, but not looking at the physics, very fast phenomena, milliseconds. And also they were not developed for megawatt scale or gigawatt scale. So we did develop a model theoretically in our supercomputer, and we needed to validate them with a real model at least. So we needed to benchmark it. Benchmarking is a very important step when developing new models that are going to become generic in the scientific world. So we created a model, and then taking advantage of this project, we have a pilot in South Vendig. We also cooperated with our partners of the project, like Hasuni, for instance, and also we get support from Kirion to install meters and to perform a campaign of measurements to get the necessary variables to calibrate and to see if our theoretical, very detailed model can follow a real device that will have, of course, time characteristics that are inherent to the technology, but however, the performance is similar. So we did that. We have here a schematic of the interconnection of this electrolyzer from an electrical point of view to a substation in Maiden. Can we go to the next slide, please? Then this is an illustration of this campaign of measurements. The measurements are with the dotted lines, and the simulated are with the continuous lines. So we did in a week we did different tests. So we challenged the electrolyzer to increase or decrease its consumption from smaller steps, like from 90% to 100% consumption, going to larger steps like 50% to 100% consumption, or even a more challenging 0 to 100% to see how fast it will ramp, and to see if it could ramp up or ramp down its consumption in a few milliseconds, which is something that we wish for this investigation. So as we can see in these figures, we were able to produce a model that can replicate one type of technology, and the model is flexible, could be used to analyze and to replicate, not to replicate, but to simulate the behavior of other technologies. So for benchmarking purposes is good, and for researchers it's even more important, because in our generic model we can try all type of new concepts that will motivate new specifications for new technologies in future. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is an illustration of results. So, as I said in the beginning, having the electrolyzer equipped with some special strategy to adjust its consumption is very valuable to improve the performance in a millisecond time scale of the system. So we see that here. The red curve here we see on the right column to the bottom is that the electrolyzers do not, and they're just consumers of renewable energy, right? They are not adjusting this consumption at all. And then we have different control methods. Two classical, what we call it droops. So the electrolyzer will just ramp up or ramp down with a certain slope, as we saw in the field tests, which is more or less current technology that is being tested. That will help to mitigate the maximum frequency deviation, as we see, for instance, with the green line there in the figure at the bottom to the right. But if we try more advanced concepts, like making electrolyzers to be like a virtual motor, for instance, then it's much better. We have a very higher reduction, like with the, I think it's the violet color. Not only the maximum frequency deviation, but also it improves earlier. It tries to mitigate this slope of fall of the frequency. That the mitigation of the slope of the fall of frequency has a huge impact from a physical point of view. Because if we don't prevent that now and in future, this means that we will have higher risk of cascading outages, because synchronous generators that might remain in the system, or other power electronic devices like wind farms or solar plants, will disconnect if that frequency falls too abruptly. So we see that here then electrolyzers could have a very high value if equipped with new and advanced control system, which was our main research driver. And that is, we also show it in the report that was issued almost a year ago, that will be also more effective, will happen faster and more effectively than if we use or we do adjustments in the transactions in the scheduled power through HVDC, high voltage direct current transmission corridors. So it's an important point of attention for subsequent research. You want to see now a more challenging situation with electrolyzers, big ones in different locations, and we face up even more renewable, even more conventional power plants, by using renewables. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Jose, you've got just one or 2 minutes left. Perfect.
Yes, I will just wrap up. This is my last one. So in short, the takeaways from this study is in activity 2 is that hydrogen is an attractive solution and unlocks potential for adding and developing new control principles. So it's the first time that the demand on a large scale can help to really have more control actions to facilitate diverse type of operations, and will also probably help to have more economic operation, affordable operation, and reliable operation of the system. And number 2 is that we can equip the electrolyzers. We need to improve the technology to better support the power system, and we did already one case here as we show in this activity. We need to look at the location of these electrolyzers. It's not that they help whenever in any location. It is location dependent effect. We need to see the rating, how high is this electrolyzer, how it will influence this big electrolyzer or medium-sized electrolyzer to the system, and more importantly, what kind of control strategy we add to it, how we design it, how we optimize it to be robust. This is important points of attention in the design on improving the electrolysis technology from the electrical point of view. And then towards very future systems like 2050 or beyond, when we want to have this 100% electricity supply from renewables, then we have very low inertia or no inertia systems, zero inertia systems, which will be really chaotic means here because of the random fluctuations of both consumption and renewable energy. So how we stabilize that? This is a big challenge, and then we probably need even more or new concepts for the control of the electrolysis, which will accelerate this transition. The earlier we obtain it, the better we can go with large scale offshore wind, for instance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Really, really interesting. So if I understand correctly, the conclusion from this project was that electrolyzers can take over the frequency control function that conventional plants like gas plants carry out today. Is that right?
Yes, we illustrate with these cases that this is a feasible option.
Yeah, yeah. And then the areas to explore in future, you said that's a location-dependent effect, so we need to think then where
Yes.
the electrolyzers should be put. And then it's a question of looking also at the size, if they're bigger. And as we phase out more conventional plants, how is that effect maintained or enhanced, or can we maintain and enhance it? Is that...
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And especially the new kind of control methods we need to attach to the electrical system.
Yeah.
This is very important.
What would be an example
well.
of a new kind of control principle or method? Just one example when you say that?
Yeah, in this project we did one in which is like a virtual synchronous machine. It's kind of emulating the fact that we have in a classical system rotating mass, but we don't have here. We just did a trick with some sophisticated control system to make the electrolyzer to behave like a synchronous machine that is using conventional plants, with the difference that this is much faster.
Yeah.
Because a conventional machine, we have mechanical part, will take several hundred milliseconds to seconds to react properly. Well, this electrolyzer, if equipped with the right approach, could react in a few milliseconds, so dozens instead of hundreds. And this is very good for future low inertia systems. We need ideally something that can react instantaneously, so even less than 10 milliseconds.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and for me it was also an eye-opener to hear about the value of electrolyzers on the millisecond scale, because in the more general debate, hydrogen is often linked to talk around seasonal storage and the longer term stability or resource adequacy of the system. So this idea that electrolyzers are also important and can play a role in keeping the system stable in the immediate moment is an additional dimension. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you very much for that. And with that, we're going to move on to our next speaker, Wim van der Veen, who's presenting work package 3 of the TSO2020 project, which is the cost-benefit analysis modeling. So Wim works at DNV. He's got more than 40 years experience working on energy supply, and he's part of DNV's energy markets and technologies team here in Arnhem. And nowadays, one of your areas of expertise is system integration, and inevitably that's a lot about renewable energy integration, and I imagine hydrogen is one of the bright spots on the horizon there. So over to you to hear about what this project taught us about that.
Yes, okay. You are going to forward the slides, I believe, or?
Yeah. We're not me personally, but someone here's doing it. Yeah.
Okay, that might give a little bit interaction necessary for the animations, because we agreed to do it otherwise, but let's do it like this. Okay, thank you, Sonia, and good morning to you all. My presentation is on the expected cost and benefit of the power to gas installation in Northern Netherlands. Work package 3 was led by EASE, and the work was executed by a consortium coordinated by DNV. Work package 3 investigated the cost and benefits from two. Let me see, I get a message. Show my screen. So I think now I have control.
Try it out.
Is that correct? No, I still see your screen, your presentation. So I should see mine now.
Is
Can you see my screen already?
I'm not sure we can.
Because I cannot.
Looks like
Full screen. Yeah.
I think you're in presentation mode now. Yes.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, and now we have the agenda.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Then if it's
Perfect.
all right. Like I was going to say, Work Package 3 investigated cost and benefit from two perspectives. One is the value for society as a whole, and the other is from the point of view of the investor, the so-called business case. Therefore, we carried out three tasks. Task 1 is the total value of to society, which has been led by Tractebel. And task 3 is about the cost and benefit resulting from, the determination of the business case done by DNV. And task 2 is about cost and benefit resulting from the network led by CIRSA. This task 2 delivered input for both the other tasks. And all investigations concern 300 megawatts power to gas installation in Northern Netherlands. So on the next slide, the analysis was done for 2 years, 2030 and 2040, for 4 scenarios and 2 technologies, not only for the electrolyzer, but also for a potential competitor battery installation. Yes, it's working. 4 KPIs were calculated using our DNV European market model, and these KPIs are socio-economic welfare, CO2 variation, air quality, and financial attractiveness. We simulated the electricity market for the given year, scenarios, and technologies. CEF built a model, grid model of Northern Netherlands and surroundings, and evaluated 5 other KPIs: renewable energy curtailment, security of supply, variation of grid losses, reduction of congestion, and avoided transmission upgrade. Finally, qualitative conclusions were drawn for flexibility and technical resilience. We used ENSOE scenarios for both the electricity system and market, and for the present and the future network. These scenarios were also updated with the latest insights at that time, especially for coal phase-out and ambitions for the future development of renewable energy in Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark. We defined 4 scenarios based on 3 scenarios of ENSOE from their 10-year network development plan of 2018. These scenarios are the 2030 climate and energy targets EC scenario as a conservative scenario, the sustainable transition scenario as a reference, and the distributed generation scenario as progressive scenario. A 4th scenario is an extra progressive scenario based on the progressive one, but with more ambitious national plans for Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark with respect of renewable energy development. Another distinction between the scenarios is the different coal phase out in the 3 mentioned countries. The next slide. This slide shows the results of the simulations with the market model based on the scenario information and the forecasted hydrogen market in Northern Netherlands. For the hydrogen market, we focused on mobility and industry. This graph compares the market volume in 2030 and 2040 with the hydrogen production of the 300 megawatt electrolyzer. The market volume in 2030 is about twice the production volume, and in 2040 this is about 2.5 times the production. The table you see now gives the cost in euros per kilogram of hydrogen. The end users are expected to be willing to pay in 2030 and 40. The colors show the competitiveness of the produced hydrogen in the same years. We see that mobility in general scores quite well. Most of the values are green, and the competitiveness in the industry in general seems quite poor. An investigation of the 11 KPIs mentioned earlier was made with the market model and the grid model for the electrolyzer and the 300 megawatt battery. Both technologies score differently on the different topics, as can be seen in the spider diagram. The main conclusions of the comparison are that we see CO2 emission reduction and air quality improvement by 2040 for power to gas, mainly due to decarbonization of the transport sector. Sorry, I can show them. There is economic viability for power to gas, not for the battery. That means that there's a favorable payback time for the power to gas installation. The electrolyzer scores better on the renewable energy curtailment reduction, and grid losses are lower. The availability of the power to gas installation is higher than the battery, and both power to gas and battery can participate in the frequency control reserve and frequency restoration reserve, so they both contribute to the flexibility. An advantage of the battery is that it can be faster implemented than the electrolyzer. Let me see. The societal CBA shows that the mobility segments seems more promising than the industrial segments. There is a higher willingness to pay. It shows further that electrolyzer operation strategy should be optimized throughout the project time horizon, since market circumstances will change over time. There's a need for large-scale storage, hydrogen storage, and cross-sectoral integration. In this context, the electricity and mobility markets bring key benefits. The revenues increase as the economic viability, and decarbonization of the transport sector is possible at no extra cost for the society. Besides CO2, also SOx and NOx and particle emissions are reduced. There are benefits for the local economy already of the demonstration case, like modernization of the well-established gas industry. Power to gas gives a reduction of renewable energy curtailment, electrical losses, and congestion level. And finally, progressive scenarios with high shares of renewable energy lead to higher benefits of the electrolyzer, on the one hand due to more hours with low electricity prices, and on the other hand to a higher value of the hydrogen. Task 2 of Work Package 3 concerns the grid modeling. With the model, 5 KPIs have been investigated, and the results were used as input for the CBA of Task 1 and the business case evaluation of Task 2. All KPIs, except for the security of supply, have been quantified. The results are shown on the next slide, first for the electrolyzer and then for the battery. We see here the results for the electrolyzer for rest curtailment, variation of losses, congestion reduction, and avoided transmission upgrade, and also for the battery. For time's sake, I will not go into the details of the results and only mention the main conclusions that are depicted on the next slide. In all scenarios, the security of supply is met, both for the electrolyzer and the battery case. The electrolyzer contributes to a stronger reduction of rest curtailment than the battery. The benefits of the electrolyzer and battery are greater in more progressive scenarios with higher rest penetration. Using the electrolyzer leads to a reduction of losses in the electricity network. and it performs here quite much better than the battery. The electrolyzer reduces congestion more than the battery, except in the conservative scenario, and for all scenarios, the avoided cost of the transmission grid reinforcements are lower than the cost of the electrolyzer or the battery. The third and the last task of work package 3 concerns the business case. A model was developed to calculate and optimize the business case of the electrolyzer. The objective was to find the maximum revenue of different electricity markets, namely the day-ahead market, the intraday market, and the market for automatic frequency restoration reserve. Revenues for the power-to-gas installation then come from cross-commodity trading, that is buying electricity and selling hydrogen, from the offering of ancillary services, and from arbitrage, buying and selling electricity under different market circumstances at different market prices. The table you see here contains the results of the analysis for 6 bidding strategies, each with different trading volumes on different markets. The first bidding strategy, number 1, is maximize the ahead market, is only trading at the day ahead market. In the other strategies, 2A to 3C, the remaining volume that is not called at the day ahead market is offered at the other 2 markets in different market volumes. We see that the best results are obtained for conservative and the progressive plus scenario, regardless of the bidding strategy, due to their relatively low day-ahead prices and the hydrogen market size. The operational strategy 3B, with residual volume traded for 75% on the intraday and 25% on the FRR market, shows the best results for all 4 scenarios. The cumulative cash flow for strategy 3B has been calculated, and the figure shows positive net present values for the 2 scenarios just mentioned. Further sensitivity analysis has been performed with double market volumes for day ahead, intraday and FRR, and hydrogen, and for market prices. The sensitivity for double markets reveals that for all strategies and scenarios, except for the reference scenario, a positive net present value is reached after 20 years, and that the results are most sensitive for the volume of the hydrogen markets. A side note here is that a net present value that gets positive after 16 years is possibly for industry too long. In industry, shorter net payback times are used. The sensitivity for market prices shows that the results are most sensitive for the hydrogen price.
Wim, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. You've got just a minute left. Thank you.
This is my wrap-up slide, so that fits perfectly. We give a summary here of the key message, the opportunities and challenges. The key message is put in 6 bullets. Developing hydrogen in Northern Netherlands will foster economic, environmental and societal benefits. Integration of electricity and mobility markets brings key benefits to the region. The electrolyzer helps to reduce the curtailment of renewable energy sources and helps reducing congestion. And the electrolyzer performs better than the battery in most of the analyzed scenarios. Higher RES penetration leads to lower production cost of green energy. There is a positive business case in 2 of 4 scenarios, and optimizing the bidding strategy on the electricity market improves the business case. Further, we see opportunities for the power-to-gas installation in possible other ways to help the energy transition, like the decarbonization of the heating sector, which needs seasonal storage. It would also be interesting to look for opportunities in the market outside Northern Netherlands. And as key challenges, I'd like to mention to bridge the gap between the societal CBA results and the business case results, for instance, by looking at grid connection tariffs and further optimization of the bidding strategy. A reduction of cost and increasing performance of electrolyzers is also important. And finally, as Renee Schritz also mentioned this morning, build lots of renewable capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Very interesting. One clarification, and then we'll move on. So basically, the conclusion is the electrolyzer outperformed an equivalent 300 megawatt battery when it created less congestion, was more economically viable, less renewables curtailment. My question is that presumably depends on when you operate that electrolyzer and where it's located. Also thinking back to what Jose said, this is location is important. So can you clarify that and link to that? This compared it to one big battery, but what if you had a fleet of smaller distributed batteries? I mean, would you necessarily get to the same result?
No, I don't think so. We would get probably the same results. We see that the contribution of the network congestion is not too large in the CBA and also not in the business case analysis. We see more income from the hydrogen market and from the trading on the different electricity markets. So I think the main issue is that we need the longer term advantages of hydrogen and power to gas more than the short term advantages of the batteries. And also when we have power to gas, we can also use it for the shorter term benefits that and it's the other way around. It's not possible. Batteries can only do it for the shorter term and not for the longer term. So power to hydrogen covers more income.
Okay. And at some point you said the cost of both the electrolyzer and the battery is less than the cost of grid reinforcement. So wouldn't it make more sense simply to reinforce the grids instead?
Yeah.
Instead,
that's right. But that is quite specific for the situation, the local situation.
Okay.
You can have specific situations in regional networks where especially a battery can help.
Okay, so
that is very.
Okay, so it depends on the local circumstances as well. Yeah. Okay.
Very much.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna have to move on. Thank you very much for that.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And we move on then to work package 4. And this is split into 2 parts. We're going to hear about the Zuidwending pilot, and we're going to hear about the Delfzijl hub. So these are 2 concrete outcomes of the TSO2020 project. And first, the Zuidwending pilot. So this is the bit where the hydrogen is created from power, where it's stored and prepared for transport. And joining us to talk about that is Robert Lugis from Gasunie. With a background in finance and commerce. He's been working recently on gas storage services and sales, and is the project manager for High Stock, the film we saw at the very beginning of today, shown by Remco. So this is the conversion pilot, and one of his responsibilities going forward too is or has been the sales of hydrogen conversion services. And I understand you'll be joining Gasunie's new hydrogen department this summer, focusing on the North H2 project. So go ahead, Robert, over to you.
Yes, thanks a lot, Sonja, for the very warm words and the welcome. My name is Robert Lugis. I'm working on the High Stock pilot project, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share what we have achieved so far with the project. And of course, also a big thanks to CINEA for the co-financing of the project. To the next slide, please. So what I will share with you today is first of all a little overview of the pilot itself. For those who are not familiar with it at this moment. And after that, I will continue with sharing our gained knowledge from different perspectives, from a commercial perspective, more from a project technical perspective, and also what we learned on perspective of operations and maintenance. And then finally, I would like to show a few spin-offs that we have been able to achieve from the project, and how we are also using the knowledge that we have gained for the large-scale projects that Gasunie is now working on, and which of course Renee already informed us. So the overview of the iStock pilot, 1.1 megawatt electrolyzer pilot connected to solar panels, but also to the national electricity grid. After the electrolyzer, we have the compressor, which can compress the hydrogen to 200 or 300 bars, and we store it in tube trailers. And by means of the tube trailers, the hydrogen is then also transported to the end users. As you can see in the overview, the idea for the pilot was generated back in September 2016. We were lucky to get into contact with Patrick Knubbe, who started to introduce us with the other partners of the subsidy call, and that led to the subsidy application we also did in December 16. After a positive outcome from that, we were able to make a final investment decision in June 2017, and we had the plant in operations in September 18. So a very, very quick timeline, and something for us to be proud of. Then to the next sheet. We saw it already in an earlier presentation, but very well would like to show the picture, of course, again from my side. In June 2019, we had the royal opening, which really gave us a good opportunity to show all the plans, ideas, and projects that Gasunie is working on, but also that other partners within the region are working on. So a really good opportunity to share all those great ideas. Then to the next slide. This is to show a little bit of where we are today from a commercial perspective. Of course, at the left top corner, we have Green Planet we have a good link with, and on which we will start the delivery of the conversion services. Of course, Edward will inform you all about their progress and plans after my presentation. We also have a link with Netnav and Entrance, to our operational partner Air Liquide, to stimulate the projects they are working on. Together with Engie, we have been able to supply the hydrogen and our conversion services for the test of the hydrogen fuel train between Leeuwarden and Groningen. We also share our insights and ideas with Hogeveen, the local area, who are looking to use green hydrogen for the domestic households. And with Holthausen, you can see the fan that we now have operational at our installation. And we also have conversion services lined up for them as well. So just to show how by having such a nice pilot plant, we can also stimulate other green hydrogen projects in the area. And of course, what you also see when you have such a pilot online, that there is a lot of interest from parties, I could say, all over the world, who want to see and hear about the first larger scale electrolyzer pilot in the Netherlands. To the next slide, please. Then some insights more from a project and technical point of view. Of course, it all started with the tendering process, where we had to go from a global design to detailed specs for all parts of the installation. So that was one of the first learning points. We learned about the whole design, the building, and the operating of the new facility. And I can say that we are still optimizing the installation from that perspective today. The pilot is linked to the solar panels, but also to the national grid, the electricity grid. And it also helped us in the understanding and how we can implement the electricity landscape within the installation. So that's very useful as well. And of course it helps us build our network with partners specialized at working with hydrogen, and also partners who are supplying hydrogen equipment as well. So that's very useful, of course, for the Gasunie organization as well. Then we can go to the next slide. Some other insights that we have gained through the pilot project. We learned about the quality aspects of hydrogen. Of course, it's from electrolyzers perspective, so we are somewhere in the 5.0 standards. We learned about the efficiency of the whole installation, the conversion installation. From asset management and reliability, there are certainly learning points for our organization, as well as from maintenance and spare parts. You see quite a shift there from our supplier of the installation now towards our technical people working at the assets, who are more and more taking over that role. They are learning from it, and they can also take over that maintenance role. And more spare parts are also at the location. And something new for us also was the whole tube trailer distribution model, with more parties coming with trailers to our location. We also have to take that in mind with when do we start the conversion services and when do we swap the trailers. So you can see we learned quite a lot from different perspectives for working with hydrogen, and also gain insights between the difference between natural gas and hydrogen as well. Then I think some new projects that were developed after the Huisdorp projects, which are very nice to show as well. On the right side, we established a slow fill installation at the energy stock location, where we can fuel the hydrogen-fueled cars that we have now running, including the fan I showed earlier. And on the left side, we also have a hydrogen boiler now operational. So instead of using natural gas, we can now use green hydrogen to heat our fuel gas, which really helps us in further reducing our footprint. And that's also very important for the whole Gasunie organization as well. Then we can go to the next slide. Very recent pictures here of one of the wellheads of one of our caverns we have. You can see the Christmas tree here. And this summer we will do the testing of the Christmas tree and the whole tubing downwards to one of the options we have, where we can in the future build hydrogen caverns. So it's up to more than 1,300 meters deep, and we will test all the materials for hydrogen. Also to be to gain the knowledge and to be prepared for the next step for Housekeeping. And one of those steps is to store hydrogen in underground salt caverns. So this is what is actually going on at the Zuidwending area right now. So I hope to give you a little bit of insight of what we have done, the experience that we have gained. And for us, it's very important that the people within the organization now gain knowledge of working with hydrogen. And it's very good to see that we can use that knowledge now in the large-scale projects that also Renee showed earlier today. So that's a really good and nice spin-off we see from the pilot project.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert, and also for looking ahead to this summer and the actual work going on now, testing the potential storage equipment for the next stage of the project. Just one follow-up question. You mentioned that this project has also enabled you to gain insights into the differences and similarities between natural gas and hydrogen. Could you give us one example of what you've learned on that front? That's useful, I guess, going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of technical aspects. Of course, hydrogen is other material than natural gas. So, from safety perspective, it takes a different view of how we handle it. But also, for instance, for salt caverns itself, you have a different temperature effect when you store it in salt caverns. Opposite to natural gas, the Joule-Thomson effect. So all that kind of insights are, of course, very very useful when you go into the next steps for large scale storage.
Okay, great. Thank you, and thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to move on to your colleague, so presenting the other half of Work Package 4, Edward Dorten, the initiator and owner of Green Planet, the multi-fuel sustainable service station in Pesse that we saw Chisse Stelpstra at towards the beginning of this event earlier today. So he's here to talk about the Delfzijl hub, and this is basically the downstream distribution part to match what Robert just told us about the upstream conversion part. Edward, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sonja, for your introduction, and I hope the people can see the slides that I have to show. I think they will be there in a short time. But yeah, you introduced us in this work package in our job for doing the hydrogen hub in Delfzijl. But also we have to do the hydrogen refueling station in Pesse, where indeedly the regional minister, Stelsel, was there to give his talk.
Your presentation's coming, I'm told. Is the refueling station, it's up and running now, so you can go and fill up your hydrogen car there, yeah?
Yeah, you can come here and refill your hydrogen car, and in 3 to 5 minutes it's full, and you can drive for 300 or 500 kilometers.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is up and running, and we're very proud about that. Yeah.
And the next question is, have you got a lot of customers? Because it's one thing, obviously, having the service station, then you need the cars. So are they forthcoming?
Yeah, we're very surprised because we organized a test team, and we had 45 hydrogen users who came in that test team to do the testing of the hydrogen refueling installation. And the there was much more than we had. We thought that should be in the test team. And in the other way, we are starting Green Planet Mobility. And with Green Planet Mobility, you can buy or lease a hydrogen car by Green Planet. So at that side, we are working on the demand of hydrogen. So yeah, altogether must bring that the hydrogen, the hydrogen will getting more and more.
Yeah. Have we got the slides? I think we may do. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there it is. Let's go to the second one. So first, let me start about talking about the hydrogen refueling station. Next slide, please. Yeah, here we see the overview, and here you see also the dome of Green Planet. And there are two tasks that we have to do. That is realizing the hydrogen refueling station in Pesse by the Green Planet Dome. And later on, we also got the task to realize the hydrogen hub. And you can see it here by the trailer who is on his way to Green Planet to bring hydrogen there. And maybe we can go to the next slides. Yeah, we have chosen for the Maximator hydrogen refueling installation, and it's an installation who is ready for the market of California, and it's a big machine, and it have can give a lot of hydrogen in a very short time, and it's combined with the Shell power dispenser, and that's important because it has to go smoothly refilling your hydrogen, especially for cars. And yeah, we had a lot of work to do for getting and finding all the information about the hydrogen refueling station, but also with permits that need a lot of time, and we got a nitrogen crisis, so it was a lot of work to get this permits, but we learned a lot, and Green Planet, but also I think the local government, the regional government with these permits what have to be given. Let's go to the next slides. Yeah, and there it's in real. How beautiful is that? Here you see there's the Shell power dispenser, and yeah, it's working good, and it's very consumer friendly, and makes that people are very happy with it to refuel their hydrogen car. And in behind you see also the storage of hydrogen at Green Planet, and there are also the machines. So let's go to the next slide. We have a little bit. Yeah, we can see it even better. Now, we put on hydrogen very big there on the storage, so everybody know that hydrogen is available at Green Planet. And if you look a little bit more below you see the hydrogen storage. Storage of green. No, not the storage. The story of hydrogen story of Green Planet. With all the parties we are working together. If you go next slide, please. Yeah, here we put all the doors open, and you can see all the machinery from Maximator, who is making the pressure from in our storage 80 bar to 900 bar to refill the cars with 700 bar. And normally the doors are closed, and you cannot come so close about safety reasons, but this is better than it's now it's online. We can open the doors and show you the beautiful technical operation from the hydrogen refueling station. Next slide, please. Yeah, the hydrogen hub Delcel. Let's go to the next slide. That was the second task. And here you see, and you also heard Robert about it. We can load the hydrogen trailers at Heistock and also by pit point in Delfzijl. And we have 3 trailers now who can bring the hydrogen everywhere. Also at the at Hogeveen, with the hydrogen village there, and of course to Green Planet. Next slide, please. Yeah, and here you see them in real. The hydrogen trailers are all up and running now, and we are very proud about that. You see also the name of Vredeveld, and that's the party where we work together with. In the trailers, it's a pressure of 300 bar, 500 kilogram, and when they do unload it, it's Green Planet, they deliver 320 kilogram of hydrogen. Next slide, please. Yeah, here you see a little bit more about the transport company Vredeveld, who we have a business agreement with them for hiring the trucks and the drivers. The trailers are from ourselves, and but we need, of course, a truck and a driver for bringing a trailer to load and to unload. And if you go to the next slide, we will see the combination of the trailer and the truck. So maybe please go to the next slide. Somebody, yeah, there it is, and with big windmills there. It's a nice combination. Driving to load hydrogen at pit point in Delfzijl on his way. And if we go to the next slide, yeah, then we can see the loading of the hydrogen trailer by pit points. And if it's completely full, then we can go for delivering the hydrogen at Green Planet. What's on the next slide, please? Somebody can put it on the next slide. Yeah, there it is. And here you see it's not. You see it's work in progress at that moment, but everything is now these days is completely clean. But that was the first moment of delivering hydrogen at Green Planet. And it's a very big milestone that for us as Green Planet that we have in this TSO2020 projects our hydrogen refueling station, but also can transport hydrogen to any place in the north of Netherlands, but also to Green Planet. Next slide, please. Yeah, conclusion, and let's go one slide further. Here about the knowledge absorption and collaboration with many partners. I have some points there, the development of hydrogen market and the proposition of Green Planet. We have learned really a lot of that, and it was also the start. We did a request for quotation for hydrogen station providers, and we choose at the end for the maximator installation. Permits and safety regarding hydrogen. Yeah, I talked about that before. It was a big thing. I think we in the local government and the regional government, we learned a lot about just doing it. And then the realization of the hydrogen station. Yeah, we met a lot of partners. Together we have done the job and having a great experience with them. Hydrogen trailer provides also for that a request for quotation, and we choose for Calvera, a Spanish trailer builder. And they did also a very good job for delivering those trailers. And also here, safety and certifications of hydrogen transport is also a lot what we learned about. And also hydrogen quality is where we put time in, that the quality is good, it's good enough for cars, and also that we learn a lot. Next slide, please. And what do we do with all those knowledge? We do dissemination by press releases, publications in trade journals. We organize webinars, meetings, and of course guided tours here at Green Planet. A little bit less about COVID, but it will be more in the future. And at October 6th, we will have the grande finale of TSO 2020 here at Green Planet. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, that's my many thanks what I want to give to these organizations who have done a great job for realizing and giving permits, and also of course our partners in TSO 2020, because we needed a little bit more time to fix our job, and they we work so good together that we get a little bit more time to do this job. And my special thanks for the European Union and the national government for funding, co-funding of this project, and SINEA and the Rijksdienst voor Ondernemend Nederland for helping us and working very nice together.
Thank you. Edward, we have one question that's come in for you that I'd like to squeeze in before we turn to our final speaker in this series, which is how fast can you refuel trucks?
Yeah, at this moment, the refuel of trucks, we're working on a special project. It's called High Speed for Trucks, and we're gonna do that with a flow. It's 4 times higher than for cars, 7.2 kilogram each minute. And we will realize that next year in another project.
Okay, so it should be four times faster than for cars.
You need that have to be 4 times faster. Otherwise, a diesel
how long
truck
would you need
will refuel it.
How long would you need to fill up a big lorry in that case? Roughly
30 kilograms is in 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, I think that's clear. Thank you very much. And we're going to leave it there. Thank you. And I think everyone looks forward to seeing you on the 6th of October in the flesh, in Pesse. So we'll see you there.
And I hope to see everybody here at Green Planet, of course.
Exactly. Thank you. And that brings us to our final work package and our final speaker, Ian Williamson, Director of High Energy Consulting. He has more than 35 years experience working on industrial gases, worked for Air Products and British fuel cell company CEF Synergy in the past, and has been president of the European Hydrogen Association for the last 12 years, no less. And you're going to talk to us now about how to scale all this up and make it mass market. Go ahead.
Yes, hopefully hopefully it will be quite interesting. We're talking about not necessarily the items that have been realized. Obviously, Edvard and Robert have done that in a lot of detail over the last few minutes. What we're talking about here is what we were hoping to look at as a wider market element for the project, and how it will be realized across a wider geography. So if you can go to the next slide. I just want to recap on some of the stuff that was mentioned earlier in the discussions by Renee very early on. I mean, obviously, if we take our minds back to 2016, we are in a completely different world. We have electrolysis that is looking at hundreds of kilowatts rather than even megawatts. We have mobility demonstrations that are very isolated, and we're trying to prove technical concepts. We have a lack of planning and a lack of hydrogen awareness within both national and regional governments. And we see that, hydrogen in terms of a political understanding is quite difficult to grasp. And nobody really felt like they understood exactly where hydrogen could fit within the energy value chain. And really, that's really where TSO was born. It was all envisaged to help people understand how hydrogen could play a role within the energy value chain, both from an upstream perspective where the hydrogen is produced, but also where it can be applied down in applications such as mobility. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So activity 5 is, as we've said, is looking at the scaling up elements to mass application. So we're going to be looking at what electrolyzers are doing, where can we place this hydrogen, where if we produce lots of hydrogen, where is it going to go? How are we going to use it? And look at how we can optimize the use of that hydrogen in the best way, well, not only the use of it, but the production of it in the best way possible. And to look at how that could fit within a future business model. So if we go to the next one. So to start with, we wanted to consider how, what the drivers for demand would be. And energy engineers did a couple of study assessments as to local regions, as to around the northern Netherlands, in terms of how hydrogen could be both used and produced. And this particular study is all focused on the particular regions and how the hydrogen demand in those regions would be different within different regions. So we see regions such as Friesland and Drenthe, the hydrogen demand is going to be driven primarily by mobility. The amount of industry based in those regions is very small in comparison to some other regions. And so the application of the hydrogen is going to be a mobility application. Whereas if we looked at Groningen and if we looked at maybe North Rhine-Westphalia, we're seeing completely different splits in terms of how the hydrogen will be used, and indeed the volumes of hydrogen that will be used. So in Groningen, we're seeing significant chemical applications, and in Nordrhein, we're seeing steel be the predominant application, just like we're seeing in Lower Saxony as well. So we see these regional drivers towards hydrogen all being different, but all being a sink for the hydrogen as to when it is produced. So we now know, well, having done this project, that if we produce significant quantities of hydrogen in a green way, we can use that hydrogen in local regions. And the bottom graph that you can see on this particular slide shows the evidence of how much industrial demand, particularly over the initial period, so up to, let's say, 2030, 2035, you will see that industrial demand dominating the hydrogen requirements in the regions. So we see that the industrialized regions, in theory, will have significantly more demand. The rural regions, we're going to see that that demand is driven by mobility. So if we move on to the next slide. So when we're looking at that, that mobility demand, we wanted to spread our net a little bit wider, and we wanted to understand how the mobility demand would fit within the context of the EU 10T corridors. So a piece of work was done to look at the Rhine-Alpine corridor and its trajectory across the region, and to understand where the, if you like, the hotspots for both demand and potential production could occur. And we identified 5 different locations where we felt that it was worth a further investigation. And we found that locations like Utrecht and Nijmegen were going to follow Friesland and Drenthe and be really mobility-driven regions. But we also found, quite interestingly, that places like Rotterdam, Duisburg, and Cologne were going to have sufficient hydrogen demands locally to generate their own local hydrogen infrastructure. and their own potential hydrogen valley, shall we say, just like Patrick talked about in the first instance. So what we're seeing is that some of these regions are capable of producing and using significant quantities of hydrogen themselves. As we've seen on the previous slide, some of that is industrial driven and some of it's mobility driven. Other regions will probably be regions that hang on to some of these bigger, more localized hydrogen valleys. They become satellites of those valleys where they absorb some of the extra hydrogen. And that's what we see in the regions in the north, where Friesland and Drenthe may absorb some of the hydrogen, and places like Groningen and Lower Saxony will be places where vast amounts of hydrogen are generated. So if we go on to the next slide. And now how is that hydrogen going to be produced? Well, over the period of this project, what we've seen is we've gone from electrolysis systems being conceived of being, let's say, 500 kilowatts in terms of PEM electrolysis. Now we're seeing electrolyzers be considered up to 10 gigawatts. Most of these electrolyzers are being positioned in coastal areas or offshore, and we're seeing that those production methods of electrolysis are seen as the connector, as Jose spoke about, the connector between the electrical system and the gaseous system for energy supply in most countries. And the Netherlands has been very proactive in terms of developing offshore large-scale electrolysis systems. And we can see a table of some of the opportunities that are beginning to exist in the Netherlands, together with some timelines that we expect them to come to fruition. But we also see that ramping up is occurring right the way across the globe. So we're seeing that electrolysis systems are getting bigger. They're becoming envisaged as being part of this wider sustainable energy network, and they're being used to connect the electrical infrastructure with the gas infrastructure of the future. Mobility plays a role in that, particularly where industry can't absorb some of those emission molecules. So if we move to the next slide. So what we also need in order to make all of this work, and Renee and others have touched on this as well, is that you need to be able to connect where you're producing your molecules with where you are actually using them. So the pilot studies, obviously, the pilot installations gave a small-scale representation of this. Obviously, the Hystock project produces some molecules, and the trailers, both from Delfzijl and Green Planet and Gasunie, are able to move those molecules around the region to application areas. And we see that as being the initial methodology of moving hydrogen around until the volumes in terms of demand get bigger, and also the opportunity to use that demand to drive a change in the supply mechanism occurs. Because trailers are good up until a certain point, and I think it was Patrick who said that hydrogen doesn't travel well, but it doesn't travel well when you put it in a trailer. But if you put it in a pipeline, you can send it right the way across vast distances. And the projects that have been considered by some of the gas TSOs across Europe, such as the Hydrogen Backbone project and the Highways 27 project that was mentioned earlier, what we're seeing is that the opportunity to use both existing infrastructure that is available from natural gas and interconnecting that with new supply points for hydrogen allows a potential pipeline infrastructure to be envisaged and expanded both beyond the Netherlands, but also right the way across Europe. So we are seeing that as that demand grows, as those applications grow in those hotspots that we've mentioned, we have a methodology of connecting coastal electrolysis to those hotspots using pipelines. Initially, we'll use trailers. Eventually, we'll use pipelines to get the molecules to the right place. And if we go to the next slide. in order to do that, we need a model. And part of this model was developed as part of Activity 3, and we heard about that as part of the cost-benefit analysis that was done. But also we did some work within Activity 4, which looked at the trailer model. So how do we move those molecules cost-effectively using appropriate storage systems over the road? And can we make that as cost-effective as possible for our customers? And then finally, as part of the TSO Gazumi Backbone project, there is also a model that integrates the use of a pipeline to move those molecules. So you can see that we have all the elements of a complete system being produced by the partners of the TSO2020 project, and we are able to model the complete system to allow us to understand both the cost of supply, cost of production, but also the cost of supply to individual customers using various different supply chains. And if we go to the next one. So the future of this is that, you know, in 2021, we have a completely different view of hydrogen. We now have a view that the world has come towards hydrogen a little bit. We know that regional projects such as the Heaven project is going to act as a catalyst for regional development of many different hydrogen activities. We know that mobility has migrated from passenger cars towards heavier vehicles, and we know that these the electrolysis systems that we saw back in 2016 have grown by orders of magnitude up to gigawatt scale. So now we have all the elements in terms of technology to be able to consider a completely sustainable energy chain, and hydrogen will play a part of that energy chain. And TSO2020 as a particular project has played its part in ensuring that hydrogen will enter that value chain, that sustainable energy chain going forward. And I think that's the last slide. Sorry, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ian. That's a great overview and very useful to bring it back out to the bigger picture after we had a deep dive into the specific results of different elements of the project. One question that comes to mind is because you very nicely described the way that demand, how the hydrogen will be used also depends where you are and also where it comes from and so on. Is there enough, I suppose, interaction and connection between the different parts of Europe when you say, you know, some could be standalone hydrogen valleys, there's enough demand locally to produce it locally and so on, others will probably absorb hydrogen coming from other parts. The big picture that you've just described, is that also in the minds of policymakers, businesses, you know, that the people actually working on the ground on rolling out a hydrogen economy, do you think?
I think that it varies, to be absolutely honest. So, if you're looking at the bigger picture, I think some of the EU funding opportunities that will come forward will look to connect valleys with other regional developments going forward. And we will probably see clustering of hydrogen valleys, both in terms of inside national boundaries, but also joining countries up going further forward. And that is what is needed. We need to see this clustering approach begin to allow hydrogen valleys to begin to spread. And as those clusters, you know, merge together, we see whole hydrogen regions, and those regions are not then 30, 40, 50 kilometers wide, they're hundreds of kilometers wide. Yeah. And that then gives the public a view as to how hydrogen can be rolled out in a more international way.
Okay, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your presentation. And it sets us up very nicely for the final part of this morning, which is a short discussion looking at what comes next. And obviously mass scale up is the plan, is the hope. So I'd like to invite Renee and Patrick to join me here again. And we also have Els de Wit joining us online, if I'm not mistaken, from the Ministry for Infrastructure and Water Management, where she works with Mariette Van Empel, who we heard from earlier today. And so the idea of this last half an hour or so.
Yes.
Are you there, Els?
Yes, I am.
Perfect.
Els de Wit here.
Okay, great. We can hear you. Thank you for joining us for this final part. So the idea here was just to, I guess, to follow on a little bit where Ian left off, and to take a step back and think about what the impact of TSO 2020 has been, and especially what comes next. And I guess what some of the stakeholders, what you, Renee and Patrick, would say you also need from the policymaker side to be able to move things forward. I think we've already heard quite a lot about the impact of the project. For me, it's clear that it's been a trigger for many other initiatives here in the Netherlands and probably elsewhere as well. So I would say feel free to add if you think there's anything we've not covered on that front. But yeah, for me the big question is what happens next. So there are lots of EU projects, lots of EU funding. The project starts, the project ends, and then we move on to the next project. So what kind of continuity is there here? What kind of lasting impact, and is it another project we need, or what's most important now to keep things moving?
That's a $1 million question. So
that's why I'm asking you that
thanks
question.
very much for that. If I may, I think just to show, yes, the project is ending. I think the impact has been discussed. A lot of learnings of this project are also have come to surface. But it's not the case that now a new project will be started, because during the course of the project, lots of new projects have already been started. So it's a little bit more organic than, let's say, sequential, if you like. But the key message and the key priority on hydrogen is 1, 2, and 3 is scaling up, scaling up, scaling up. And that's exactly what has been done. And scaling up, you don't do that because it's just the size that is not needed at this moment in time. You need to do that because you need to learn from what every step in the scaling up actually means and what it will be. So I think a big contribution of TSO 2020 has been in the learnings of scaling up, what comes to surface. And those learnings can be taken into account in projects that are already ongoing and are larger in size. And the same will happen for these projects. What you actually see, and I think Patrick has already shown that, and hopefully I've shown it as well with the Northern Netherlands investment plan, we need to build ecosystems, and the ecosystems need to grow and grow larger and be interconnected within the Netherlands, outside the Netherlands, and finally to arrive at the global market. So we're well on the way, but still a lot to do.
Patrick?
Yes, I do agree. It's a more than $1 billion question, of course, and I think TSO, it isn't the beginning, this is the end. It's a path we engaged on a long time, but I think the experiences can benefit all projects because it's about sharing knowledge and sharing experiences. I think that is the key, and this knowledge will be fed in running projects, new projects. But I do agree with Renee. We need a programmatic approach, and such an investment plan as has been, let's say, developed in the region is a very good example on how to pull parties together. Because everybody needs to do a bit. It's not that somebody should revoke that. It's a joint effort and a joint benefit at the end, because it's about climate change, and we need to pull everything together to make that happen, from the energy side and from the mobility side and probably other domains as well. But I think if we can manage it from the energy side and from the mobility side, we are well on our way. And I hope the Commission will have lots of wisdom to make the right choices, and some of the choices may very well be billions for hydrogen.
Yes.
That's the hope. Els, you're here from the, I'll say very broadly, the Dutch government. We heard earlier today, Renee, when he was presenting at the start, said, if we want 3 or 4 gigawatts of electrolyzers in 2030, well, we're going to need another 3 or 4 gigawatts of offshore wind. There's been calls for, more renewables, more money, more of everything to enable this scale up. So at this stage, what can you offer in terms of more support?
Thank you very much for that intriguing question. And I would love to be able to say that we're going in for the billions. It's $1 billion question, and that's the kind of money we need. I think what TSO 2020 has shown us when I first was on the project as a lead in 2016, and we started to coming from our own strategy, seeing that for sustainable mobility, we really needed more renewable energy. And we talked to our colleague Ministry of Economic Affairs at that time, and they were not yet in the hydrogen game. And we said, you know, we need more players. So that's when we contacted Renee and Tenet. And I think what is unique is the cooperation cross-sectoral. And I think that that is the big takeaway from TSO 2020. And we're very, very proud to see that other projects have come on board. And it's like Renee said, and Patrick, it's an evolving, innovative pathway that we're on in order for us to reach the end goals for climate, but also for air quality and many other goals that we have as a government side. And I think what the project has given us is more insight in cost-benefit analysis, also in the system, the energy system. So that's very much a big takeaway for my direct colleagues in the Ministry of Economic Affairs. It has spurred on the national plans for hydrogen over the past couple of years. And of course, now we're very much waiting eagerly for this new cabinet to arise and to unfold their plans. Also for more investments in renewable energy, and hydrogen will very much play a big part in that. But of course, we still have to wait a little bit towards the end of the year, hopefully, when those plans will be made available. But we have fed all the information on what is needed, not just on the mobility transport side, but also from the energy perspective. And that is partly also, due to this project, this unique project in a European context. And Sinea said earlier, we from the Netherlands side, from the government side, are very much pushing forward to make CEF an integrated co-financing instrument from transport and energy side. So these synergy calls are crucial, and the revisions for both guidelines, I myself and colleagues, direct colleagues, are involved in aligning those two revisions in order to make it easier for business to come into and all the other stakeholders to come into these kind of projects for us to scale up even further and connect the regions that are now developing themselves.
Okay. The point taken that the fact that cross-sectoral is an enormous strength. At the same time, I've also heard it said, I'm based in Brussels usually, it's a weakness because you don't have a clear champion, someone driving it forward. Everyone assumes someone else is working on it. So maybe to Renee and Pat. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's not, you have to give each other trust. If one thing that's a takeaway also from the project is if you allow everybody to come in and champion in their own little bit, and then you all champion together, and that is what is unique of Synergy, I think. Yeah. And so we should not say that it's just one championing it. We should make sure that in these Synergy projects, there are loads of mini champions. And it's only then, I think, that we will have quicker rollout and scale up. I mean, that is so crucial.
Yeah. Maybe to Renee and Patrick, if we nonetheless try and get a little bit more granular, if you have to ask, not else individually, but the new cabinet, if you had to pick a priority, you need something to move this forward. Obviously, we want subsidies, we want regulatory changes, but can you pick, I don't know, one or two things that you say, something a little more concrete that is really important to further unlock this opportunity? And it could be, I guess, at the national level. It could also be that you say, well, actually, no, what's happening at European level is, what's really going to make a difference.
I can name a couple of things, actually. Money is clear, I think. Because we need to build up and there is an unprofitable top in the beginning. Whoever starts with it needs to go through it and it helps. And it doesn't mean that only the Netherlands needs to put the money to the table, but it's Europe-wide. And I think that is being done. We have an IPCEI process going on where actually additional funding can be sought because of state aid rules, which will apply differently. And there is also on European level, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which brings all the, let's call champions or the party champions, as Els explained, together and building their plans. So it's uniting the group. And then in the end, but that's partly Netherlands, partly European, we need to get our act together in terms of policies and law and regulation. First, remove the blockers and don't try to get in an ideal line to the finish, because that won't happen. Allow ourselves some room to maneuver. and then build slowly the law and regulation that needs to have the final environment around 2050.
What's one of the biggest blockers at the moment? If you give an example.
One of the biggest blockers it depends a little bit on the area, but the use of renewable energy sources for electrolysis rather than for electricity, for instance. And then the subsidies together with that, where you need guarantees of origin, and there is a mixture in guarantees of origin where you may end up with a kind of double counting, and everybody's very much afraid for the double counting, and I understand that, but we need to get through it. We need to allow for building up, and maybe not in the ideal situation.
So you mean it's not clear that you can use state subsidies for if you're using renewable power, feeding a renewable power into an electrolyzer, that activity is subsidized?
Exactly. That's not the level playing field at this moment in time. So the certification is one of the key issues that need to be solved.
So the subsidy is clear if you're producing renewable power, but not if that renewable power is destined for an electrolyzer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do agree on that. That's one of the aspects. The other one is, of course, the state aid rulings, which may be, let's say, overcome through this IPCEI process, because if we think that hydrogen, and green hydrogen in particular, is a solution to or contributing to the climate problem we have, we need to give a relief, or maybe waive off too strict regulations. We need to be on our way, create trust. It's also about trust that the parties can do it, and that the regulations are, well, let's say, become fit for purpose along the way. I think that's one of the main keys, and don't wait until everything's perfect, because it never will be. But give trust, let the parties endeavor on their route, and and there are lots more things which can be done, of course, because this, if we put it right, we have the state aid rulings in a just let's say scenery, with some specifics like Renee told, like the RED revision and the 10T and the 10E revision. I think we can pull this off, and it's more than just the Northern Netherlands or the Netherlands or Europe. It's a collaborative effort on all aspects.
Els, can you help with some of these problems? For example, the renewable energy going to electrolyzers subsidy issue. Is that one? And maybe beyond that, what can you do, and what are you looking to for Brussels to help you with?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think Renee and Patrick, the blockers are known. I think the revision that will on the 14th of July. We're waiting eagerly for the Fit for 55 package from the European Commission. And I think there'll be loads of momentum to address the individual directives that we really badly need in order to scale up. For transport, it's a sort of dual picture, and I won't go into any detail because it's quite complicated how it works out. There's also a renewable energy directive for transport, and so there's a tricky a tightrope that we're walking with the red revision, I think. But I do think that there is a way forward that we should, as both ministries coming from the transport side and from the energy side, that we can align ourselves on the red. There's also the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive that will come up with, hopefully, the need for more refueling infrastructure that will also guide us as member states. And of course, the revision of 10E and 10T that I spoke earlier about is on our top priority list of addressing. It's all working together. And what I just said, not just the stakeholders in the field, but also the connected ministries. That we feel that this is something that we need to embark upon. What we need from Brussels is more integrated policy making. So the Green Deal, Fit for 55 package, super duper. But personally, I also think it's so valuable to have environment councils combined with transport councils, combined with energy councils. And in 2000, when we had our presidency a couple of years ago, we were able to do a sort of combined council. And now I just heard yesterday that Slovenia is going to do a combined council in the second half of the year. And I'm very happy about that, because we need to share these experiences, not just in the transport side, but also our energy colleagues, in order to get the right momentum, had to make these necessary changes in our policies on a European scale, and the directives that are guiding the market, that are steering the market. So it's very essential that we work together, and we need more political policy making also to align themselves in the various council meetings. So that would be great if we could all acquire that as well.
And is there anything specific you're looking at from stakeholders, like Patrick here, like the New Energy Coalition, like Gasunie? From your perspective, what can they do at this point?
Yeah.
Or what should they be
I think
doing?
that the energy partners that are with us in this project, they are also important partners and important stakeholders in, for instance, the 10E deliberations, in which mobility is not taking part, of course, in CEF, for instance. So it's very essential that from the market side, where there are the connections up to the various instruments, that on the energy side, people also say, hey, it is good to connect up with partners from the mobility side. So to allow CNEA, what was said earlier, the synergy calls are there in the new revision of the CEF2, but the budget is still modest, the 27 million. And I think if we are to unleash more projects with combined market consortia, the European Commission would follow suit and would give us more scope to have more windows of opportunity to come in on these kind of projects. Because one thing is very clear, this is a $1 billion transition that we're going through, and we really need the coming years still very much co-financing constructions and financial constructions with state aid, with the European aid, and with investment from industry, if we are to tackle this transition that is so badly needed for transport and mobility, especially for the heavy-duty maritime and aviation applications, if we are to decarbonize long-term in 2050.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring back Remco in a moment to wrap up, but maybe a final question or a chance for each of you to give a final word. One point that came up a little bit in the background now and then today was public acceptance, which is something you don't hear much about yet, I think, in the hydrogen discussion, where we're busy with the regulatory nitpicking, the money, the technical master plans. But in so many cases in the energy transition, think of biofuels, think of big transmission lines, think of CCS projects. Some of these huge ideas have been derailed simply because people finally said, actually, no, I don't really fancy that. So maybe a quick response from each of you. Is the public along for the ride? Are they with you, with us on this?
Shall I start?
Yes.
Well, I think it's a very important point of attention. But I do see that if you inform the audience, the public, in a just way, that's the key issue. It's also about building trust. Hydrogen is used all over the world in enormous amounts every day, and it's secure. But sometimes these are industry locations which are behind the fence. But looking at, for instance, at public transport, everybody knows a bus. Maybe also put that forward somewhat to make it a normal item within, let's say, society, a bus, a car, heavy trucks, but don't forget the industry, because the industry can benefit tremendously from that by also, let's say, making more intrinsic that it is safe. It is very safe, and it can be done. We don't need a Hindenburg or these kinds of images. We need to work on that continuously. And I think, especially in the domain of Gasunie, that is something they work on every day in a very professional and excellent way. I think that's essential.
Yeah, that's and if I may add to that, yes, it is key. What you notice at this moment in time is we are full in planning making and projects, but for the general public, it's still far away. So it's very difficult to get them now involved because there are no solutions always to show them, except for especially public transport, where it can be done. If you look, for instance, at the discussion around changing the fuels in houses, So going from natural gas to something else, you already see that many people embrace hydrogen because they feel, well, it's just a substitution for natural gas, what we have now. They don't know yet how and when, but they believe, well, it can come. And actually, at this moment in time, around the Olympic Games, which are the hydrogen games, as you know, we started with some other companies in Netherlands, Mission H2, which is actually focused on bringing the news of hydrogen to the public. So the awareness, and it's in the safety programs, but it's also in just the awareness on hydrogen is now starting to pick up, because we have also some cases to show. And when you want to reach the public, you need to come to the right level. Otherwise, it's too academic. And I think it's starting, but you're right. We need to make sure that we don't derail because of too little attention to that.
Okay. Els, a final thought from you on that?
I think Renee just said, thank you very much, Sonja. And where it becomes visible for people now is in mobility, is in the hydrogen buses, is in that hydrogen rail that operates that started operating in Groningen, but also the garbage trucks, etc. I think mobility as a sector, as an offset market, is very valuable in getting the message out there to the broader public. And I think what's very strong, most recently, Toyota has started campaigning for the new Toyota Mirai, and they sell it to the audience. I don't know whether anybody of you has seen the movies or the small trailers, as the car that cleans the air. So I think that it is in combination with all your sector players that you get that message out there to the broader public, that hydrogen gives an answer not just to an energy transition, and not just to a climate problem for CO2 emission abatement, but also for cleaner air quality. And I think that those benefits, and I think that's what drove us in the TSO 2020, understand the full benefits of hydrogen across chains. And I think what needs to be done by us as governments is to have more public campaigning as well on this energy transition and what it means for the individual living in the countries. But also we need to develop with the businesses a bigger understanding of the new value chains and the new businesses. I think what Ian said really struck me as well. I think if we can put the image out there that there is a new society, a decarbonized society, but that money will be made in a different way, and then you will also get acceptance from the public. I think that everybody is still very much busy on a day-to-day basis in the business scenario with a lot of fossil fuel in our system. And I think you need to show people what can be done, what is the new future for the Netherlands in the energy transition. So I'm hoping that together with our colleagues from Economic Affairs and Climate, we can give people that broader new image with a new cabinet as well. So I'm very hopeful for that. But we all need to do a little bit of public reaching out in our own possibilities and capabilities.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and I think thank you for linking it back to the TSO 2020 project and the fact that really also demonstrated the need and the ability to, as you say, to sell hydrogen effectively across value chains and to think about all the benefits it can provide. And I guess inevitably that will be essential for it to get the public acceptance it will need to be a success and to be a significant part of the economy. A big thank you, a virtual, or in here it can be physical, round of applause to the three of you. And with that, I'd like to welcome Remco back as TSO 2020's project coordinator to leave us with some final thoughts before we close. To get us excited about the real closing on the 6th of October, I hope.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think, first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers from today, because without them, I think it was impossible to tell this great story. I think we have had some very interesting discussions, and I think it's fair to say that we have a great green future for hydrogen coming. And yeah, this is also, of course, linked to the Fit for 55, which is an important goal. And yeah, we are not there yet, but all in all, I think we are very good on the way to have a successful future for hydrogen. And I think TSO is one of the starting points for that, and that is what we try to share with you today. I think we still have some blocks to fight. And I think legislation is one of them, and of course finance is an important one, which we need to sort out. And but I think also in that respect, the movement is going in the right direction. So everything and seeing everything today, what we've started and what we have initiated, I think it's a great future for hydrogen. And especially for the finance part, I would like to thank, of course, the European Commission for the generous funding, and also for TENET and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management for their generous financial support in this whole project. And we see what it leads to, and we need more of this. So TSO started it, but it's not the finish. And I think to connect to what Els said, we need a lot of champions, and we need a win-win situation for all of us. And I think that's what hydrogen can bring us. So maybe some practical things to finalize for all the listeners online. If you want to see our reports and everything we produced during this 5-year exercise, you can check out our website, which is TSO2020.eu, where you can find all the detailed reports of the research, the cost-benefit analysis, and everything related to what we did. And finally, as you already said, we're ramping up for the festive opening in Pesse, which will be on the 6th of October this year. Right before Wind Meets Gas, which is a conference here in Groningen related also to hydrogen. And in name of the consortium partners, I would like to invite everybody to come to the opening, and invitations for that will be sent out. And our host there will be Mr. Edward Doorten, the owner of Pesse, of Green Planet, and he's happy to welcome you and to bring a toast to hydrogen and TSO 2020.
Thank you, Remco. Thank you to all our speakers today and all of our watchers and listeners. As I said at the start, the recording of today's event will be made available, as will the slides. And as Remco said, we look forward to seeing you after the summer. Thank you very much, and see you then.
Thank you.